Hello, everyone. We're about to start the show with Dylan Burns. I'm just waiting for him to send through the Discord link. So if you're watching, please make sure to stay. If you're on Twitter, I think we've got like a couple dozen people on Twitter. Go through to my YouTube. I put the link below. The link is always better on YouTube. Snout says, "Sup, Drew? Hey, mate. Congrats on 10K. Thank you, guys. I'm very happy with that. We just hit 10K on YouTube, which is really good. So if you're watching, remember to subscribe. And leave a like on the YouTube video as well. Please leave a like. Helps us reach more people. Monsieur de Roge says, "Hello, Drew. How are you going, Monsieur?" And yeah, guys, leave a like. Hey, Drew, did you reach out to Alex now, Raster? Yeah, man, I will be debating him. Maybe give me a week or two, though. I've got to. I'll obviously have to prepare because he's a proper academic and all that sort of stuff. Just waiting for Dylan to send me through the link to our Discord chat. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. We've got 13 people watching on YouTube. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like. It helps us reach more people. Very important. And we've just reached 10K subscribers. Thank you so much. If you've been subscribing, I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. It's really helpful. And I think, look, I like Dylan. Dylan's a really nice guy. He's one of the only leftists that I still like. And I think maybe he's going to be trying to stage like an intervention against me. Fair enough. But I'll try to explain to him why my views have shifted and actually are not just a product of the X algorithm, but instead are actually kind of like part of a broader philosophical shift that has been brewing within me for like 2-3 years. Drew, joint ticket with Drew Hasty 2028. So true. We love Hasty. He's such a patriot, guys. I love Hasty. I'm hoping that I will get Hasty on the Drew Pavlis show sometime in the next couple of weeks. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's a really nice guy, and I'm a massive supporter of Andrew Hasty. I would like to try support him with the Liberal Party leadership. Cool. Okay, finally got All right, guys. Sorry, technical difficulties. Give me a minute. I'm going to use my laptop to set up a simultaneous broadcast. Sorry, 1 second. Fuck's sake, man. Technology is so difficult for me.
most look at the world, most of us, but I don't know. Sexy hair like mine? No, my hair is a mess. My hair is a mess. I haven't showered and washed my hair since 20 hours ago. That's actually not that long, but it sounded like it was longer in my head. Still, with hair with this voluptuous hair, you need to get it bouncy every day. Dylan debating that Drew guy from Down Under. Well, we're gonna talk. I don't know if we're gonna debate. Oh, I noticed we didn't change the title on Twitch. I just have like Drew Pavlu as the title. Okay, there we go. That's better. You can rotate Earth map and it will be correct. You cannot flip it though. Says what? Who said I cannot flip it? I just got kicked from the call. I just got kicked from the call because it was taking too long. Jesus. Okay, we'll just turn this on and we'll wait. We'll wait till Drew Pavlu has gotten ready. There he is. He's calling me now. Okay. Hello.
Hey Dylan, how are you going? Sorry about that. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly fine, and I can see you, which is the other
Excellent.
concern. So
And
everything's perfect.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad. Is it okay? I'm just going to simulcast our discussion from your Twitch onto my channel as well. Is it okay?
How fucking dare you? Of course. What do you mean? Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you, man. Okay, cool. Awesome. I just want to double check. Yeah, okay. All good. Okay, we're good. Everything's working well. Let's discuss. I wanted to say hang on. I'll just turn up my volume a bit. I know that maybe this is a bit of an intervention. I want to say you are still like one of the very few leftists that I still like. And so if everyone was like you on the left, Dylan, I would still consider myself part of the left. But unfortunately, I think you are a very small minority as sort of like an anti-tanky person on the left. And that is part of like why my faith in the left has been shattered and my belief in human progress has been shattered. So we can discuss this stuff.
You think most of the left is tanky?
I don't think most of the left is tanky. I think, unfortunately, so much of the left, even the center left, make excuses for tankies. And unfortunately, like a lot of the tanky stuff has bled into the center left as well. That's my unfortunate sort of understanding of what's been happening. And I think a good example of that is like Ezra Klein, who's probably like the leading sort of intellectual standard bearer for the kind of like moderate faction of the Democrats. Like he makes excuses for like Zoran Mamdani and stuff like that. So unfortunately, like I think that's the grim reality that
You're not voting
a lot
Mamdani.
of people in the sense. Of course not. Nah, not at all. Not at all.
No, I'm voting a lot illegally for him.
Oh, I mean, I obviously. I mean, let's just first clarify. I actually cannot physically vote because I am Australian and I am not American. But
yeah, he can. It's not legal.
Well, when it comes to my metaphysical voting, like the voting that I carry out in my head, I would not be voting for Zoran Mamdani. I'll actually be casting a ballot adrift on the high seas for Eric Adams. He is a crazy guy, but I think he's quite funny. So I'm going to cast a sort of a ballot in a bottle, and I'll just set it adrift on the Pacific Ocean, and hopefully it'll get to New York City by the time the election rolls around.
Man, I didn't think we were going to start Mondami. I didn't even plan to talk about Mondami, but this is an interesting topic.
No.
This is interesting. Drew, do you know, by the way, welcome to the show. This is Drew Pavlu. You might know Drew Pavlu from his history and I don't know, what is it, queer activism? You like fought for demisexual rights? I have no clue what you did. What did you do?
Yeah, I was fighting for ace rights for a long time. No, I started out kind of as an opponent of the Chinese Communist Party. I was doing a lot of Hong Kong activism back in the day, Tibet activism as well. The Chinese government like literally put out articles in state media condemning me. I got expelled from my university in Australia because they had really close ties with the Chinese government economically. They swatted me. I got false bomb threats against me and my family members. My brother who lives in America got swatted as well. There was a point where the Australian Federal Police like literally had to disrupt They literally had to raid guys in Australia who were working for Chinese foreign intelligence and trying to find my address and physically harm me. So it got really, really hairy and it got very heated, my activism against the Chinese government. As part of that, I also became like a really big supporter of Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine twice now. I was there in March. I went to Kherson. We went to Kherson for 2 days. We went to Dobropilia in the Donbass, which is close to the front lines. We went to a number of towns. I went to Kharkiv as well. Where else did I go? Kharkiv, Dnipro, Pavlograd, number of places in the Donbass. It was a really good trip. I learned a lot about the world, and it was extremely disturbing and blackpilling, I'd say. Walking through the aftermath of an apartment building, a Khrushchevka in where was it? It was Dobropilia that had been hit by an Iskander ballistic missile like 2 days before, and I walked through like literally apartments that were still like burned out, and that was extremely doom appealing. Just I think this is part of like my broader sort of philosophical shift towards conservatism, Dylan. Like my belief in like human progress and like the innate goodness of the human person has been like shattered over the past like 5 years, and my whole focus now is like, rather than trying to build like this sort of like perfected utopia through public policy and stuff, my biggest concern is like, how do we prevent like full scale collapse, full scale civilizational collapse? What, like the horrific stuff that we see in Ukraine. I don't want to see wars take place. I don't want to see civil wars take place. Like I've become way more concerned about crime, even just crime as well. Like just like that killing of Erna was so horrific. In Charlotte, North Carolina, Ukrainian refugee girls goes to America to escape the war and is just literally murdered for no reason by crazy mentally ill guy on the train. It's like I've just become so much more concerned by crime. I think multiculturalism across much of the Western world is basically like collapsing because of like, it's very difficult when you've got like people who migrate and then they're basically tankies like Syria girl, or they're basically Islamic extremists and stuff like that. Like it presents like massive cultural problems. So in all these ways, I've unfortunately become quite doom appealed about the world. And I'd say that's why I'm like sort of like a philosophical conservative now.
Got you. Well, that answers one of the questions. Was what's your philosophical underpinning? Was one of the first questions we're going to throw out there from one of the replies. So I think we kind of got that right off the bat. We'll do some fluff before we get to anything interesting from what the chat threw at me to ask you about, or stuff that I want to personally ask you about. Dobrapilla. I spent a lot of time in Dobrapilla. Obviously, it's the main like logistical node between them there and Pokrovsk, and I filmed for a year. I filmed a documentary about the battle for Pokrovsk. It's coming out in a few weeks. And I mean, the fighting down there is horribly brutal. And there is a lot of ways that it can like affect you and affect your view of politics and affect your view of the world and what's important. When, you know, I go to Pokrovsk and I see people buried in their front yards because it's not worth it to put them in the back of a truck and evacuate them, because it's better to put a living person in the truck than to carry a corpse. And to have this type of, you know, front yard graveyard in front of all of these different apartment buildings, with a lot of these graves like set up already smashed by artillery shells. I hope that the bodies don't get cut up by the artillery, but to go from that and then to come home and then to hear like, you know, imagine if we were still talking about like the Blues Clues like Trans March episode. Like it's impossible sometimes for me to transfer back into our politics and take anything seriously. And I felt that in my debates. I felt that in a lot of my conversations when I come back. I've just felt that in a lot of the malaise in everyday living and trying to care about other things, because it feels so penultimate when you see such destruction. I mean, war to me is best defined as the destruction of law and order. And the closer you get to the front line, the less law enforcement there is, the less law there is, and pure war is lawlessness. And that's what I've seen in Kherson. I spent a lot of time in Kherson. It's very bad in Kherson. The human safari there is particularly brutal, particularly aggressive. But I mean, that is not something that's necessarily even isolated to Kherson. It's just that the Kherson drone pilots are probably some of the worst monsters. Did you ever embed with the army, or where were you? Who are you working with?
Well, we went to the main Ukraine drone center in the east, and we met with literally the head of the drone forces at the time. That was incredible, and we also went out to a drone team near Dobropilia that was like very close to the front lines, and we went into their sort of like underground dugout, and we saw, like, I literally saw them flying over Pokrovsk. And dude, that
Recon, fixed
what you just
wing.
um. I'm not sure necessarily. Maybe fixed wing. Like
I would
they
imagine it's
just put
fixed
up
wing
like
because if you said it was March, right?
yeah. So
If
they
it's in
put up a
March,
fixed. I think it
Dobrapil is far enough from the front that
yeah. It
there's
was
not a
fixed
lot
wing.
of FPV pilots there. So I'd imagine it'd be
Yeah,
fixed wing
yeah.
recon drone.
It was a fixed wing recon drone. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we saw them fly over the battlefield, and you just see like rows and rows and rows of just completely destroyed housing. And dude, honestly, I'm really thankful that you explained it in that way at the start of our talk. Like war is the total breakdown of law and order. I think that that's a huge thing for me. Like just seeing the real consequences of the total breakdown in law and order and stuff like that. What I saw in Kherson was so unbelievably chilling. Like we walked. I think I got to about 400 meters back from the river. Um, so the river is like full death zone, I guess. And like we went through like the red zone where essentially like the Russian Telegram guys just said everyone who's in the downtown area in Kherson, we are considering a military target. Doesn't matter if you're a civilian, doesn't matter if you're an old babushka lady. If there's civilian traffic in that area, we're dropping grenades on it with our drones. And that's essentially what they're doing. And I walked through the downtown area, which was just completely destroyed. You could see shrapnel in all the walls. Every single thing was boarded up. There was like basically almost no signs of life. When I describe it to people, I say it's like a bit like I Am Legend. Like you're like literally walking through like this built up area that is just like almost completely devoid of all signs of life because everyone was basically forced to evacuate closer to the river because of the just constant terror campaign waged by Russian drones. And you're just walking under crunching glass underfoot, and it's really eerie and silent. And you're also constantly looking over your head because, like, what our guide was saying to us was that, like, in some of these parts, like, if you're driving down the street in some of these parts, you've probably got like 1 in 10 chance of just literally being like hit. And so, like, I remember like just a council car as they had to get close to the river, they were just literally speeding as fast as you could get. And the reason why they speed like that is because they don't want to be drone targets. So seeing Kherson and then seeing Dobropilia, where like, yeah, I literally walked through a Khrushchevka apartment that was hit like it was like hit like 2 days before we got there. And the whole place was sort of like cordoned off, but there wasn't really any security. So I literally just walked into the Khrushchevka apartment building. And you could literally just walk through like the completely eviscerated apartments that had just been completely burned out. And it was like you were walking through the apocalypse. So I saw the aftermath of that. And I think the official death toll for that one was like, I think they said it was like 12 people who had been killed. But what some of my guides were saying was that it's likely that potentially more people were killed. Like, and if you looked at it, I actually thought like, how could it be that only 12 people were killed? Because there were like at least probably like 50 apartment block, like probably at least like 50 separate rooms that had just basically been burned to a crisp, and they hit in the middle of the night while people were sleeping. And I know like obviously they don't want to demoralize the public with like the mass casualties, but walking through that place, I thought it's really hard to believe that only 12 people were killed here. They hit the place with double tap munitions right after as well. And so you could see the shrapnel indentations in all the walls. They essentially waited for firefighting trucks and ambulances to arrive, and then they hit the first responders with the double tap and with cluster munitions. And basically, the cluster munitions are like they hit for like a full square block. So you could walk like 300 meters in every direction, and you would still see the cluster munitions, like the shrapnel indentations in all the walls. And so you're walking through that and you're like, how did anybody survive this at all? If you were just literally in the area, if you were a first responder, how the hell do you survive a cluster munition strike like that? So it's just like it does shatter a lot of your sort of prior conceptions about humanity, about just life itself. It's really, really dark. Like, and it was my first experience as well, ever being in an actual war environment. Like, I literally went from full, complete suburban living in just like peaceful, sunny Australia to like literally a week later, I was in Dobropilia. And then a week later, I was back in suburban Australia. And that fucks with your head a bit. Like it really does. Cause like I was literally like, say on the Wednesday, I was walking through the apartment block in Dobropilia. And then like, yeah, 7, 8 days later, I'm just grocery shopping in like suburban Brisbane, Australia. And yeah, exactly. Like you go back to normal life and the debates that people are having are just like so humdrum and so seemingly disconnected from, yeah, like what I had just seen in Ukraine. So it really messes with you in a quite deep and profound way, I think.
I do my embeds in Ukraine like at 6 to 8 months time periods usually. So it's roughly
Yeah.
the same length as like an average deployment. So it was roughly like 9 months. Sometimes I'll take like a month break or something and I'll leave. But going from that and like coming home to just readjust to
Yeah.
again that type of lawlessness environment to a more peaceful, tranquil kind of community living, where the noises that are just daily noises are not noises that are meant to kill you, but your body tells you
Yeah.
that it's noises that are meant to kill you, but your brain is telling you, of course, it's not going to kill you. Like, this is a difficult issue for a lot of refugees, for a lot of again war journalists, soldiers, anybody that leaves the country, even those just going on vacation to Spain. Like it can be difficult for those soldiers who do get that leave after they engage in defense of their country for a very long time to enjoy that time off because it's there's just constant kind of reminders, and every time, all the time I'm not in Ukraine, I'm
Yeah.
constantly just thinking about Ukraine. But the first responders, that's a big issue. I interviewed a lot of ambulance crews and I saw just rows and rows of these things in storage units, burnt out, destroyed, filled with shrapnel holes. I've heard stories of ambulance drivers getting scalped by munitions, of like just horrible stuff. And when it comes to the firefighters, it's particularly brutal because what they do is they'll throw an incendiary bomb into a house in Kherson. The house will start burning. People might be burning alive, running out. It's a horrible situation. A fire truck comes down. They start to try to treat the fire. And then immediately they send another bomb to then take out the fire truck. And if there's any first responders
Oh,
that
it's
come
probably
after, like an ambulance crew, they target the ambulance crew as well. And so it disincentivizes any response from civil services to help people in these areas. It's meant again to expand that lawlessness to a point where people cannot bear it and they cannot sustain life in the city. There's a few reasons, like
yeah.
speculations as to why they do this. I think it can have the military purpose of if you clear everybody out of the city, then all of the movement is military movement. And therefore, anytime you see anything, you can just strike it. There could be a certain amount of bitterness of the fact that this is the only regional capital that threw the Russians out. There could also
Yeah.
be a certain amount of, I mean, I don't know. There's the bitterness, there's the desire to push them out, but then there's the training theories, the idea that drone pilots are constantly being cycled in so they can train. And from the amount of dogs that get hit, from the amount of like targets that just make no military sense, it's not hard to believe. Not to mention, there is a lot of rotations out of Kherson. A lot of troops are actually just rotated out of Kherson to the Donetsk axis because the Russians are having trouble making up those manpower shortages with just their new recruitment numbers. But as the other thing you said about going towards the front, seeing all destruction, walking through it, for me it was a lot more surreal for places like Konstantinivka because I saw Konstantinivka
Oh,
back in
yeah.
2022. I saw Konstantinivka in
Wow.
2023, and I saw Konstantinivka in 2024, and then I saw it this year. And I'm about to go back to Konstantinivka to continue filming and watching this community slowly decay, as if like every time I'd come back to the city, there'd be another building hit or another group of buildings destroyed, less people every time. And the last time I was there, it was like nearly impossible. I mean, it was like artillery going off constantly near our vehicle,
Mhm.
just constant fire around the area. The only people who are left are the most stubborn people. I don't know if this is not thankfully, but Konstantinivka is filled with a lot of stubborn people, a lot of stubborn people. And it's not just the usual like drunkards who have the same life in their basement drinking vodka before the war that they have after the war.
Yeah.
But very, very stubborn people. But yeah, what you
It's
said
funny
about the
that
cars, quickly about the cars.
yeah.
When I was driving in Eastern, because I wanted to cover as much of Kherson as possible. So I went to Eastern Kherson, which is the part of Kherson
Wow.
that is probably a lot more violent. And we wanted
Yeah,
to drive
yeah.
down that road because the locals just call it like the road of death. And I was like, well, okay, I can't come to Kherson and not film the
Wow.
road of death. That seems like something that should be
Wow.
filmed. And as you're going down this road, I mean, it's so dangerous that they don't remove the vehicles that get destroyed. They just basically
Wow.
push them to the side of the road, and they kind of stand there as you cross by as a kind of steel roadside coffin of those that they used
Yeah.
to carry back and forth from the front. And there's civilian vehicles there's military vehicles there doesn't seem to be any general distinction there. But I really always hated the cars, because I always viewed them, just anytime I see a burnout car, I'm just like, you know is that a coffin? Did they get out? I have no clue.
Yeah, that's wow, man. That's very dark. You're right, man. Like even just it's so funny because like obviously I had it really easy compared to everyone else because it's not like I was literally in fighting or anything. But even just like coming back to Australia, like I remember there was a house getting constructed nearby, and there was like a big bang, and like the first couple days, like I got back and I kept on hearing those big bangs. It freaked me out a bit. It does just yeah. It's a really grim thing, and I guess my mindset has always been like when these horrible things happen, I like want to like sort of bear witness to them. I don't want to be like like and so like I forced myself to see like the videos that they put out from like the Russian Telegram bombers, like the Russian Telegram channels, like they'll literally put out footage of atrocities from Kherson and stuff like that. And like I like watch them, right? Because like when they post that human safari thing, it's like I want to bear witness to what they're actually doing. And
Oh, they posted
and
me. They posted me and my buddies on those
holy
channels.
shit,
Well, I don't know if you know this,
really?
but I mean, after
Yeah.
they blew up the Novkakovka Dam, which is what I believe happened, what I think most of the evidence shows towards,
Yeah,
but
I think that's absolutely true.
investigators
Yeah.
disagree. That's what I think most of the evidence points towards. Um,
Yeah.
After the dam exploded, which we know for sure that happened, floodwaters
Yeah.
rushing these homes. Elderly people, disabled people start drowning in their own homes because they don't have the ability to get out without assistance. And within 48 hours of that happening, the Russians start shelling the city. And I'm passing aid workers with flesh wounds who have just like quickly stitched up what they have and just get back out there to try to save as many elderly people as they can. Homeless people, just massive gash wounds on their head, just walking around, because
Oh
like
my
those
god.
types of people just keep living. The most vulnerable are some of the people who are
Yeah.
going to be hurt the most. And so I
That is
remember when
so grim, man.
we went to the shoreline with a group. It was me, a group of German aid workers, and my friend John Jones, an elderly British expat. He used to do policing in the Bahamas, and he was driving this boat. I was supposed to be on this boat, but it was just too full, so I just didn't get on the boat. They go out the shore. The boat doesn't work due to a miscommunication with like aid command. It was a fucking mess. I'm gonna be honest with you. So they
My
come
god.
back to shore, and then 122 millimeter mortars just start slamming into the boat. Hits my friend John Jones in the stomach. He has to be dragged from the shoreline as he's bleeding across the mud. The mud is so deep that it goes up to it goes up to your fucking like way past your ankles. So you've got to like go like you're walking through deep snow trying to run from this fucking
Wow.
shoreline. And the one bunker that we were told by local police to jump in, like and they emphasized it so much, like if anything happens, bunker. If anything happens, bunker, because they didn't want no Yankee on their record, dead Yankee. And
Yeah.
we go over to fucking pull on the bunker, and the shit's locked. So we just have to kind of squeeze our bodies between buildings in order to live out the bombing. Anyway, next day I visit John Jones in the hospital. The Germans are fucking so shaken up, they just fucking hightail it out of the country. The hiker who wanted,
Wow.
big heart hiker who wanted to come to Ukraine and help, finding out, holy fuck, this is war, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
we get
Many such
sent this
case.
video. I get sent a video from my buddy from Telegram, which shows the Russians playing music with the song going like, "We're the gods of war," and there are mortar
Holy
shells
shit.
slamming into our boat. And
Holy
they then
shit.
say that basically we're Azov special soldiers gonna cross the
Oh
river
my
and
god.
create a bridgehead, and they had saved Russia by blowing up
Holy
our
shit.
aid boat that was meant to pull the elderly, disabled, and like household pets out of homes that were flooding.
Holy shit. Can you later on, can you send me that actual video if you've still got
I
it?
can
That's
send you
just
the
shock.
full investigation I did with offbeat research on it.
Yeah, please do. That's crazy. I mean, you've literally got like concrete evidence of a war crime. You like literally basically that means you basically researched the war crime that they committed against you yourself. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, me and my friend. I mean, John Jones was the one who got hurt. He's the one who's got to deal with the medical issues forever. So, like, I really wanted to make sure that,
How is he now?
he almost came back. He almost came back.
Wow.
He was evacuated to a hospital in Odessa, and eventually got out of the country. He's with his family. I don't know if it's back in. I think it may be in Hong Kong right now. Either way,
Wow.
his wife doesn't want him to come back.
Yeah, in those cases, if I the main reason why I couldn't spend longer in Ukraine was because my family was going mental at me for going over there. I really wanted to stay longer, but my family were just going so mental at me
Oh, I
for
just
even
said,
going.
try to find me. I'll disappear.
Oh yeah, gee. By the way, man, I remember your house burned down. Like, how did that go? Like, are you okay with all that? Like, how did
Yeah,
is that all
it was
sorted?
great actually. Yeah, it was great with it actually. It was
No, no,
how was I with that? It was fantastic.
no. I mean, like,
I love the smell of smoke on my one remaining sweater that I was wearing.
no, I didn't mean that. I just meant like, did you guys recover from that and everything? Because that's obviously so horrific.
No.
Yeah. Damn,
I
man.
mean,
Like,
like the house
so,
burned down. I mean, what do you mean recover? Like, we're in a rental
I just
property.
like,
We're trying to rebuild, but then after the fucking house
yeah.
burnt down, my grandfather raised me. He passes, and the house was partially in his name, which means then
Ah,
the
gee,
fucking
man.
deal with the insurance company gets thrown into a loop. And so they like we get like
Ah,
initial money to like pay for some of the stuff, but we haven't gotten compensated for everything. And the housing hasn't even begun to be rebuilt. But thankfully, the house that my address was leaked at is the house that burnt down. So nobody can swap me
ah,
yet.
that's good. That's good. Oh, gee, man. I mean, it was Hassan Piker who literally swatted you, right?
Hassan Piker swatted me. My God, I had no
What
clue.
didn't he didn't
Well,
didn't
no,
Hassan Piker post your
Hassan
address?
showed like my 9-digit zip code on his stream, which if for people who don't know, a
What the
5-digit zip code shows like 140,000 people in an area. Like it can show
yeah.
quite a while an area. A 9-digit zip code is used for delivery of mail by mail carriers in order to figure out exactly where your home is if they get lost. So this is literally something like, oh, I can't find your house. Oh, I have the 9-digit zip code. Now I can find your house. And
How
it
did he even
essentially it
get that?
narrowed down my house to like 6 houses, right? And then you just
Holy
look at the
crap.
news report when my house burns down. You can see my fucking front porch. It's not a difficult puzzle to put together.
Holy shit. How did he even get that?
Uh, I worked with a group called Progressive Victory, and as part of the group, part of my work with them, they paid me like $1,000 a month. Then they filed with the FCC. They filed with the federal like stuff you have to file with as a political PAC. They didn't tell me they were going to file that address. I would have gotten a. They didn't tell us anybody in advance. They admit that it's their fault, that they should have said something. Because if I knew that, I just would have given them like a fucking mailer or like some like drop, some PO box and not my
Yeah.
address to be posted everywhere. And so then Hassan picked
Bloody
it up
hell.
to say that look at all these like, Zionist streamers, including me in this
You're
kind of
not
like
even
bubble after
Zionist,
Bad
dude.
Empanada highlighted it. It's honestly all fucking stupid. Look, let me be honest. I don't
Yeah.
think any Hassan fan's gonna come to my house and knock or do anything. If it's a Bad Empanada fan, their ankle will break while walking up my front steps. I'll be fine. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll survive. I'll survive.
Empanada's tried to dox me multiple times. He posted my address and stuff like that, my
What's
old
your
address,
address?
and yeah, he
Damn it.
posted my old address though. He posted my old address in Australia, and yeah, he's a really evil guy. These guys are really bloodthirsty, man. I'm actually like, I'm confused why Hassan even calls you like a Zionist, because like, I don't think of you as a Zionist at all. Like, your main thing's Ukraine, like
I
100%,
don't talk
like
that much
100% of
about
your
Israel
effort.
Palestine, and my position
Yeah,
is, I would say, for America, it's pretty progressive on the issue. I wouldn't like Zionists in the idea that I don't want to push Israel into the sea, like in the idea that I'm not
yeah.
determined to like destroy Israel because there's tons of people who live there. There's like I don't want to displace all these children. I don't want to displace all these families. They've built lives for themselves. It would cost much more lives, much more destruction. They're an atomic power. There's a million different calculations as to why that'd be fucking stupid and it wouldn't work. But that doesn't make me a Zionist to like acknowledge the physical reality of the world. But also,
No,
a
yeah.
Palestinian state has to be created. It's not negotiable. It's not debatable. If it's not created, then there will be another October 7th.
Well, look. Here's the thing. Like, my actual stance is like two-state solution. I'm just against like, I'm only really a Zionist insofar as I believe like the Zionists should not be pushed into the sea, which of course like is that makes you a Zionist in like the sort of like far left
Do you think
worldview.
Netanyahu should
Um,
go to prison?
uh, I don't know. I don't know if I believe in the charges against Netanyahu. Like, I don't necessarily agree with everything that Netanyahu's done, but Look, it's a horrific war. It's a horrific war, and it's difficult because I think Hamas has had a strategy to systematically use civilians as human shields and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I think it becomes very complex when you talk about the actual operations and stuff like that. I think they've been too brutal in how they've conducted their operation in Gaza, but I'm not sure if it's like, I don't think necessarily ICC charges are merited.
I think you should stand trial at the ICC. Look, I don't follow the case close enough to know if the charges would be sufficient. And somebody can commit a crime and you don't have enough evidence and you can't bring sufficient charges. But I mean, Netanyahu is one of the biggest perpetuators of the war. He doesn't want to accept any conclusion where there is a Palestinian state. I think there's political motivations for why he would want to continue the war. And he's somebody who seems to keep rewarding the worst actors in Israel, people who want to continue expansion in the West Bank,
Yeah,
people who
look,
want to take over the Gaza Strip, and every single off-road where we talk about an actual future is talked about as a reward for Hamas. Well, if there's a Palestinian state that's rewarding Hamas, okay. If there's a future German state that's rewarding the Nazis, if there's a future state of whatever country that's rewarding XYZ, that'd be ridiculous in retrospect because we all acknowledge, of course, the Germans are eventually going to have a country. They're eventually going to have some representation because if we don't do that, what are the Germans going to do? They're going to look for some other method to get representation, whether it be violence, whether it be XYZ. And I think the same thing is true about the Palestinians. And until Netanyahu, I think, is no longer in power, and there is somebody in there who can build an agreement where the Palestinians have a place to live and they have an existence where they can represent themselves, we're just going to be in an endless circle of violence.
yeah. Look, at the end of the day, I want the war to end.
Do you think Palestine should have a
It's very
state?
Yeah, I do believe that. I do believe Palestine should have a state. I believe in a two-state solution. I just don't want Hamas to be anywhere involved in the governance of Palestine. And unfortunately, they are still in charge of large sections of Gaza, which is I think a tragedy for the Palestinian people as well. Because I think unfortunately, the Hamas war goals going back to October 7, you can actually see Ismail Haniyeh just a couple of days after October 7, and he was on an Arab television program, and he was saying we need the blood of the children, of the grandmothers, of the mothers to awaken the Palestinian people to fight. And so that is a massive disaster. I think, unfortunately, the Hamas leadership have basically a kind of like apocalyptic worldview where it's a bit like sort of like Imperial Japan in 1945 or Nazi Germany in 1945, where it's like they actually welcome mass destruction and mass suffering for their own people because they think it'll awaken like people to fight. And I think that's a huge part of why this war is still going, and it's a horrible thing. If I could press a button to stop the war right now, of course I'd stop the war. Like I don't take any pleasure from it. I think it's a horrible war, and I do feel really badly for Palestinian civilians stuck in Gaza. I don't know necessarily how we can have a solution because it's really difficult that Hamas is still in charge in large sections of Gaza. And literally, this is a really sad thing. Like literally the day that Australia, Canada, and Britain extended diplomatic recognition to Palestine, Hamas brought out 3 Palestinian civilians and they executed these civilians in the forecourt of a hospital that they were operating out of, saying, "Oh, these guys are all collaborators, so we're executing them." And it's like that. I think is a really grim kind of grim example of like how intractable the situation is, where Hamas is still governing sections of Gaza, killing people in Palestine who oppose their rule. It's a really difficult situation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that Hamas are not good actors. I think that what they did on October
Yeah,
7th was not only destructive for the Israeli people, but ultimately horribly destructive for the Palestinian people, horribly destructive for the
yeah,
region, horribly destructive
yeah,
for regional tensions. Um, and then not to mention Hezbollah's follow-up to decide we're going to back it up with rocket strikes and the destruction that brought to southern Lebanon. These are all things that I
massively
think are
insane.
undebatable. But I also
Yeah,
think that if Hamas was to disappear tomorrow, that wouldn't change anything.
I guess that's where I differ because I think
Because
I
well,
genuinely believe like
let me just
yeah,
my
sure,
problem
sure.
here is if Hamas disappears tomorrow and nothing else changes, the conditions that produced Hamas are still there. And there's other groups
I
like
get you on
Islamic
that.
Palestinian Jihad who are more radical than Hamas. It's crazy to think that. More radical than Hamas on the ground, have fighters, and they want to fill the void. And so, if, for example, Hamas is, let's say, for whatever reason, that strike on Qatar was more successful, And when the Israelis violated their airspace, they actually took out everybody in the leadership. And then the Palestinian people took the opportunity and was like, we're done with, overthrew him, whatever scenario we want to throw out there. After that, the Israeli state will not recognize Palestine. After that, they will not recognize the state of affairs. This is going to lead to the Palestinians being able to govern, rule, or manage their own affairs. I remember having the Saudis offer the Israeli government a demilitarized Palestinian state, meaning a Palestinian state that's not allowed an army, no military force, not even if it's not ruled by Hamas. It could be ruled by the most moderate. It could be ruled by an LGBTQ drag Palestinian queen who would just up there would just say Yas Queen every day. It would not be allowed to have an army, and like it, no matter what. And that deal was completely not even considered. It was not thought about because the idea of the creation of a Palestinian state is fundamentally opposed to what Netanyahu, his cronies, and the people in power currently in Israel and the right that has been largely empowered want to do. They think that they view it as a reward, and they're generally speaking, they've been opposed to it anyway.
Yeah, look, I obviously oppose like the Israeli right on that. If I was given the chance to like magically solve this solution, if I was given like somehow like magic powers to solve the conflict, I would literally put in place the Saudi deal. I think honestly the Saudi deal is the best possible option. And I agree with you, like there it is really, really difficult. Like the Israeli far right has a lot of power in Israeli politics. One of the difficulties I think with the ICC charges against Netanyahu is it helps him a little bit present himself as like an embattled leader to the Israeli public and helps him try to like draw up his own power when he already was quite unpopular for presiding over October 7. It's a very complex situation. I do think that the Israeli far right, like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, they're disgusting people. When the Australian government put sanctions on Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, I didn't complain about that at all. Like, I think Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are disgusting. They are like genuinely like kind of pretty genocidal. And people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich don't really believe in like Western values and stuff like that. I think people like Ben-Gvir are unfortunately actually like bringing the politics of the Middle East and like sort of like trying to make Israel another Middle Eastern state. And I think that's a really sad thing because like it's just stupid as well from a strategic perspective because it's like,
is it not another Middle Eastern state? I mean, it's in the Middle East.
No, I mean, it's supposed to be. I mean, the way that they try
it's
to
supposed to be better than the rest of them.
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is like they try to present themselves to a Western audience as, well, we're a democracy. We're not like the same as say like the Syrian government or the Iraqi government. Not. I'm not talking in terms of like Arab ethnicity. I'm talking in terms of like.
Well, no, I get. We're not like Saddam. We're not like the Ayatollah. Well,
yeah,
we're not
literally.
Like we're not even like Erdogan. We're not like Assad. Exactly. We're not like them. We're the only democracy in the Middle East. Fuck Tunisia. We're only a democracy in the Middle East.
So that is of course the way that they present to the world, and the difficulty is people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Like, I don't believe that they want to be the only democracy in the Middle East. Like, I think Ben-Gvir basically wants Israel to be like Saddam Hussein's type Iraq, right? So it's a very sad thing. I'm really against the Israeli far right. Unfortunately, they have a lot of power in Israeli society. I think, unfortunately, the reason why the Israeli far right have a lot of power in Israeli society is because in previous iterations of the conflict, like for example, right after the Oslo Accords were signed, Hamas responded to that by carrying out bus bombing attacks in Israel, and they killed dozens of civilians. That's how Netanyahu was first elected in like 1996. It was literally right after those bus bombing attacks, and he won in like a really, really small. He won by like less than 0.5% of the vote. It was like a really, really small margin of victory. And a lot of political scientists say that like if Hamas hadn't carried out those bus bombing attacks, Netanyahu never would have become the prime minister of Israel in the first place back in 1996 or whatever it was. And then of course, like, you know, there was the attempt with the Oslo Accords to create the two-state solution. Unfortunately, Yasser Arafat was part of, you know, they initiated the second intifada. There were just literally hundreds of suicide bombing attacks against Israeli civilians. And I think it's the experience of being burned like that, the fact that I think they were a lot closer to a two-state solution under the Oslo Accords back in like, you know, the 90s. And I think, unfortunately, like the grim reality of like the sort of second intifada is that it kind of destroyed the Israeli left. It literally did destroy the Israeli left. Like, if you look at the Israeli Labor Party, which governed the state for like the first 30 years of its existence, like they are literally like a minuscule, non-existent almost party in the Israeli Knesset right now. And a lot of political scientists basically say like the Israeli center left, the Israeli Labour Party were literally destroyed by the Second Intifada, by the wave of violence that took place after the Oslo Accords. So I think that is unfortunately the grim reality. I think a lot of the actions by Palestinian militant groups are like almost like perfectly designed to try and destroy any hope of peace. And you look at October 7, like the people that were killed in those kibbutzim were largely people who were on the pro-peace camp in Israeli politics. They were largely leftists. You had people like Vivian Silva who were killed on October 7, who had literally devoted her entire life to trying to build like peace between people in Gaza and Israel, and trying to build up sort of like civil society connections between Palestinians and Israelis. And on October 7, she was literally just slaughtered like in her home. And unfortunately, like that type of thing, it kills the Israeli left. It makes it really difficult for the Israeli left to be like, let's still try and build a two-state solution, when literally the Israeli leftists, like literally the same people who are trying to build peace, are killed on October 7 and killed by Palestinian militant groups.
I remember like watching the videos from October 7th. I always like the defense of it was always so bizarre, because you could like see them like shooting dogs, like not only shooting civilians, but just shooting like completely militarily illegitimate on every. There's not even a dog's coming up to expecting to be pet and then gets shot in the face. Like there's
so
just
sad.
the type of like barber, and the thing is they could have like not uploaded that, but they released footage.
They released it, yeah.
They were bragging about it on every level. It was as if, and you are right to an extent, as if somebody was trying to create an excuse to go in there and just demolish Gaza. I will say
that
when it comes
to the really grim reality,
these militant groups and the actions that they've taken, I'm not convinced that if there wasn't the second Intifada, if there wasn't these actions, that we would have necessarily transitioned towards a better future. I would like to hope that is the case, but
yeah.
I don't know how much of Palestinian self-determination is necessarily going to be gained just by negotiations outside of some amount of pressure. I think that there is a certain amount of carrot and stick approach. And I do need to ask you, if this war ends and Hamas is destroyed, and we have some form of Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip, which many are expecting. The West Bank, of course, its future is still, in question. Even Trump himself is saying, we should maybe cool it down in the West Bank. If they continue to occupy and there's no pathway towards a Palestinian state, should Australia sanction Israel?
I mean, that is literally the trajectory that the Australian government is already on. I think
good?
that the Israel. I mean, this is the question, right? I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a productive thing, because yeah, I know, because what I'm saying is, it seems that every time that there are these sort of like BDS type organizations, they're often targeting the people in Israeli society that actually want peace the most. Like, for example, in Australia, like you have these big BDS campaigns like, oh, let's cancel all ties with Israeli universities and stuff like that. And it's like, it's often with literally leftist Israelis that they're trying to cancel ties. So I don't know, like maybe individual sanctions against people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, like I've got no problem with that at all. I don't know whether, I don't know. It's a very difficult thing, right? Because the Israeli society.
I don't mean like individual sanctions. I'm talking about something that would make it difficult for Israeli society, make it difficult for them to continue without some solution.
Here's the thing, though, Dylan. Every single time that this type of thing is carried out, it always seems to result in further backlash and further radicalization of the Israeli public. So, like, what I was going to say is, like, I think the Israeli public is still extremely traumatized by an event like October 7, because if you look at like the for example, when the first responders were giving testimony of the kibbutzim right after October 7, and one of the kibbutzim, one of the civil service sort of emergency responders likened it essentially to the Holocaust, and a lot of people like mocked it online. They were like, "Oh, he's lying." You know, the 40 beheaded babies thing that Palestinian sort of activists will always still bring up to be like, "Oh wow, like see, they were lying with all the war propaganda from the very start." Like the realistic thing is that guy who went into there was just extremely traumatized, and I think he wasn't lying on purpose. I think it's just that like the trauma of seeing the atrocities that took place, it was like the immediate thing that he had in mind was the Holocaust. And I think what I'm trying to say here is like, I think it's indicative of like the level of trauma that took place on October 7. It was designed to traumatize the Israeli public. It was designed to terrify people. That's why they slaughtered so many innocent people on that day, why they slaughtered so many leftists. And that's why I'm like, is it really going to be the case that you are able to produce peace by responding with harsher measures on a traumatized public? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm not sure if that's the way to build peace. It's a very, very difficult, intractable conflict. There's a lot of hatred on both sides. I hope that what I would like to see happen is basically the Saudi proposal, where it's like an Arab peacekeeper force goes into Gaza, they demilitarize it, and they govern it for a couple of years to help rebuild it. Like, that's what I would like to see happen.
Well, I just look. I'm not saying Israelis shouldn't have a secure future. I'm not saying Israelis shouldn't feel safe in their home. I don't want anybody having to run into an air raid shelter or anything like that. Of course, I've dealt with it. It's not fun, you know. But my main concern is always going to be that I'm an American. We send a lot of aid to Israel. We support Israel. We send our Air Force and our pilots to go defend their airspaces if they're attacked. We fight with their geopolitical rivals in the region. We have troops deployed in the region where if they get in trouble, our troops can get bombed on their bases in the region. And so, you know, Israeli security does affect American security. We've entwined ourselves as both a conscious decision of both American and Israeli defense policy. And so if I acknowledge that, I can't just like give Israel an endless free hand if it's going to keep dragging us into the conflict. And so at a certain point, if they're just going to continue to do something that's going to hurt their relationship with the rest of the Arab world, and it's going to be something that, quite frankly, I think produces events like October 7th, then I don't think that's something that I want to support. I don't think that's something the American government should support. And at a certain point, I can imagine an immediate aftermath. Maybe you don't go into immediate sanctions, but at some point you can't just say, well, they're so traumatized, the Palestinians should just eat shit for a while until, you know, and in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, at a certain point, we have to deal with the foundation of what created this, or we're going to sleepwalk into another event like this. And next time, maybe it won't be just the Gaza Strip. Next time, it'll be even more expansive raids or expansive air attacks into the West Bank.
Look, I understand your perspective. I think maybe the best solution is, I think Trump should pressure Netanyahu.
One last thing. I almost forgot it. This is the point I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan looked at the Israelis and said, you guys are holocausting Lebanon when they were bombing the south of Lebanon. Is that an insensitive comment? Absolutely. Is that what I would have said? Probably not. But it also shows a difference in rhetoric in the way that the American presidency engages in Israel as time has developed, and a consensus has developed that basically it's the topic you don't touch. Basically, it's the country you don't really, you know, and if you do, there is organized money that will work against you. Not because the Jews control everything, but that's just because how politics works. I'm sure if Armenians were as good as organizing as the Israelis are, they would probably be lobbying against as many pro-Azerbaijani politicians in the West or whatever. You get the idea. But the general premise is, like, at some point, we have to, I don't know, channel our inner Ronald Reagan. Never thought I'd say that out loud. And say, like, we got to look out for our own interests and also the interests of the region and also the principles that we stand on as Americans. No taxation without representation. I can't say that out loud and say, except for the Palestinians, they're just too barbaric.
Look, I at the end of the day, I support Palestinian statehood. I hope that the Saudi plan is able to be implemented, where basically Hamas needs to be forced to surrender. And at that point, hopefully, a kind of like international coalition can go into Gaza, help basically enforce peace, and help rebuild the city, and try and make sure that any Islamist terrorist groups are basically sidelined from that process and kept away from Gaza. I hope that can be what is done. I think it was actually like a good thing that Trump basically forced Israel to stop attacking Iran. Like, I think that was actually relatively good how he basically put an end to that conflict. Like, it was a kind of like short and sharp thing. They made their point. I think it was actually a good thing to take out the nuclear reactors, and then they just put a lid on it and stopped it at that point. I think that was good. I think it was good to stop that from spiraling out of control. Like, I think that actually is I think honestly the nuclear reactor raids was a good example of peace through strength, where it was like a limited strike. It put a lot of pressure on the Iranian regime. It kind of like bloodied their nose a bit, but it didn't actually like send the entire region into a massive war. It didn't involve boots in the ground. It didn't involve like a 20-year sort of state building project. I think that is potentially, when it comes to like Iran, I think that is potentially the best way to go about things. Like, when they get out of line, you bloody the regime's nose a bit. But
do you think
obviously
that's a
my
long-term solution? Because, like, we delayed their project maybe by 6 months to, on the best end, maybe 2 years, 3 years if we're lucky, right? So we're talking about the end of the Trump presidency, best case scenario. They got the enriched material out of the facilities. And this seems like just a delaying action. We can't just like endlessly bomb the Iranians and just hope that they never develop a nuclear program. They're going to rebuild facilities, this time more hardened, trying to stop future strikes. And so at some point we have to pursue some sort of a deal. But I do agree that it certainly bought them time, and it didn't seem to have the backlash that many people feared. I would say that honestly, I'd say Trump got away with it.
Yeah, see, what I would say, right, is, say if I was just like magically in charge, I'd just say, listen, we're not going to use violence against we're not going to use violence against the Iranian state, but the red line is we're not going to allow them to create nuclear weapons. And anytime you get close to that, we're just going to bomb the facility. And I think like that is a limited thing. It's not like literally regime change operations. This is just basically saying, here's our red line. We can have a situation of peace if you stop trying to cross that red line. And that's kind of how I see the stuff with Russia as well. Like, you see Tucker Carlson types, and they're always trying to say like,
Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk types, yeah.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say is like,
actually,
these guys
we do need to talk about Charlie.
Yeah, we'll go into that. We'll go into that.
After this.
Yeah, we'll go into that. So these guys, they're like, anyone who supports Ukraine, they're craving war with Russia. They want to have a regime change war with Russia. I don't want a war with Russia. My response is like, here are our red lines. When you cross those red lines, we're going to bloody your nose. And I think that's peace through strength, right? Like, I think, honestly, I would have if I was in charge in February 2022, I would have put a Western no-fly zone over Kiev. And we would have just said, listen, we're not going to war with Russia. We're not going to attack Russia proper. But if you put jets over the sky over Kiev, we're going to shoot down those jets. And then you can choose how to respond to that. And realistically, Putin would have just fucking respected that, because I don't believe he's suicidal. I don't believe that he actually, at the end of the day, regime preservation in Russia is his highest goal. And I don't think he's ever going to actually cross to the bounds of potentially going to full nuclear war over that, right? So that's how I see things, right? Put a no-fly zone over Kiev and just say, listen, if you're putting a Russian jet over the sky of Kiev, we're going to literally shoot it down. And they're not going to do anything about that. Honestly, they would respect that, because they're not going to go to nuclear war over that. At the end of the day, Putin's highest goal is regime preservation. And I think that's an example where it's like, here's our red line. We're going to bloody your nose if you go over that red line. We're literally going to shoot down one of your jets. And they would have literally just respected that. I genuinely believe they just would have fucking taken that.
That is true, but it seems like the Trump administration's like end zone for Iran is like regime change. Like when they talk about like how we deal with the problem of the nuclear program, they don't even really talk about. I mean, there is talks, but they don't really like it seems to mostly be focused on the idea of like, well, what can we do to try to bring about and hasten the end of the regime, which has been the strategy from the United States for some time, and it hasn't really gained any progress, at least in my view. It's a very young country in Iran. The public doesn't really like the Ayatollah very much when it comes to the youth of Iran. But I also don't necessarily believe that if the Ayatollah was to fall tomorrow, that what would replace them would be a Western liberal power that would welcome American military bases and fossil fuel deals. I think that there's a decent chance that even if there was regime change, it would end up just being maybe slightly more moderate than the Ayatollah when it comes to religious authority and how they impose it on the public and how they impose it on the youth and women when it comes to how they dress. But that doesn't necessarily translate into geopolitics. It could that they hold the same position as against Israel. I mean, the majority of the Iranians still hate Israel. I mean, like, if you ask the youth about like, hey, do you love the Ayatollah? No. Do you love Israel? No. That's a actually really respectable position. and much of the Middle East, not only in Iran but outside of Iran as well.
Yeah. No, I get you on that. I think like ultimately I want to see like, Putin, the Iranian regime, Xi Jinping. I would like to see all these regimes collapse. I think it just has to be something that's done internally though. Like I think unfortunately we can't we can like the way I would do it is we place like a sanitary cordon essentially around these regimes. We stop trading with them. We let them just eventually collapse out of their own accord because they've got these massive internal problems. Like, for example, Iran. I think ultimately the Iranian people probably will actually overthrow that regime at some point in the future because it is quite unpopular. It's probably about like only 20% of the population actually support it. And so if you just put like a sanitary cordon around that regime and you just basically stop trading with it and not that the West really trades with Iran right now, but just you just sanction them. You say, here are our red lines. If you cross the red lines, we're bloodying your nose. And so we stop. We don't just allow them to constantly keep pushing. I think that was the big problem with like the sort of Obama administration. I think when it came to Russia and Iran, they just like basically let these regimes like get away with way too much, like Crimea, and then also just even with Iran, like it just seems like they just were constantly allowing them to like just always push the envelope. Like look at what they let Russia and Iran do in Syria, for example, or what Iran did in Yemen. Like unfortunately, I think that I think the Obama doctrine was actually
I'll point
too weak.
the finger at Obama for a weak response on Crimea and him mocking
Yeah.
Romney about, oh, you need to get your Cold War policy, like that. All that aged so terribly.
Yeah.
But when it comes, sorry,
and that's my point. That's my point. Mm-hmm. I was also saying like Syria as well as a good example because he had a red line in Syria.
Syria, that was Congress. I mean, like you can blame Obama for setting the red line, but he went to Congress. He asked for the authority in private sessions to go in there and wreck shit up. And they said no. They were too scared after Afghanistan. They were too scared about Iraq. And at a certain point, Obama could have said, screw you, screw Congress. I'm going to go in there and do it anyway. Maybe he could have pressed for it more and he could have stuck his neck out on the issue and say, look, you as a Democrat are going to vote for this because this is what's right. We're not going to let people get gassed, or this is important for national security. He could have maybe done that. But let's not say that's just Obama's failure. That was a bipartisan failure in the House and the Senate when it comes to taking strong action on Syria to at least hasten the end of the war, if not to end it immediately. Because nobody can tell me 13 to 14, like years and years and years, how long that war went on was the only way it could have gone. It could have only gone for 13 to 14 years of brutal civil war. I don't believe that.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. See, I see your point there. You're making a good point about Congress. It's not even necessarily that I'm saying Obama should have literally overthrown Assad much sooner or anything like that. It's more like when Russia went in like 2015, he basically seems to have been like, oh, that's a fait accompli. Like, we will let Russia essentially just do whatever it likes in Syria. That seems like to be what he basically did. And I think that was a major mistake. And he also let Iran and Hezbollah essentially do whatever they liked in Syria as well. So I actually think it's a really good thing that the Israelis neutered Hezbollah. I think that's a great thing. Like, I think the amazing thing is what we've seen over the past 2 years is that actually Iran, Hezbollah, Assad, all these different regimes, like they were actually way weaker than everyone in the West thought the whole time. And unfortunately, it just appears to be like we were all just too weak in responding to them. Like they built up all this propaganda. Even Russia as well. Like Russia built up this massive amount of propaganda in the 2010s that they were like untouchable. And then obviously they've done such horrific things in Ukraine, but also they have been bogged down for like 3 years. So it's like what I'm trying to say is I think like the sort of authoritarian axis, the Russia, Iran, China axis, like especially during the Obama era, they kind of built up an image of themselves as like this sort of like this tide that just could never be stopped. Like there was just they were just this rising tide that couldn't be stopped. And then like you just look at like how like just literally using military force, they crushed Hezbollah. Like the Iranian regime was pretty weakened. Russia has been like really like obviously Russia is still a massive force and massive threat, but at the same time like they have been really mauled to a large extent as well in Ukraine. Do you get what I mean? Like I'm just saying that like there was this kind of like propaganda narrative that like the Russia, Iran, China coalition.
But I mean, this is not. I don't think this is new to this era. I think back in probably 1930s, you would be hearing about the new kids on the block. In any age, Like anytime a power is transcendent, the powers that have already transcended are going to be very nervous, especially if those powers are being directly aggressive towards said other power. And when it comes to the Russians, I mean, they have been pretty aggressive for some time. Putin has, written essays about what he believes about Ukraine. He's expressed what he believes, I think, pretty clearly. But it's not even just a Putin issue, of course. Like Boris Yeltsin, I mean, he was the one who invaded Chechnya. He was the one who threatened to invade Ukraine over the atomic arsenal. Bill Clinton's friend was the one who said, we'll invade Ukraine if they don't give up their nukes, right? It was our Congress who said, we'll starve Ukraine if they
Who
don't
said
give
that
up their
again? Sorry.
nukes. I said it was Boris Yeltsin who said he'll invade Ukraine if they
Oh,
don't give up their
yeah,
nukes, and it was America's
yeah.
Congress people who said they will starve Ukraine if they don't give up their nukes.
That's sick.
Cutting
Yeah,
off their
that's
aid
so
programs,
sick.
cutting off their this and XY,
Yeah.
as Ukraine went through a 10,000% inflation rate that was literally record breaking for inflation rates, to the point that children were selling their bodies on the streets for money. And we chose that moment for Congress people to go in the House and dangle food in front of their children in order to disarm them and say, we'll come and we'll support you later. And then we acted like snakes.
Yeah, it is so sick. I completely agree with you. That is so sick. And like, I remember there was like, I think a photo of Obama, I think potentially in like 2006 or 2007 or something like that, where he was like inspecting like the kind of like Ukrainian weapons of mass destruction that were getting destroyed. And it's like, that just all aged so poorly. Like the way that like the West put all this pressure on Ukraine, disarm, remove like these old sort of Soviet era arsenals, and in exchange we'll give you security guarantees, and then obviously just like completely fucked over and betrayed. So I see like the West has, unfortunately, I believe like the West has betrayed Ukraine like multiple times, and it's a really disgusting thing, unfortunately.
It's part of the reason why sometimes I get so aggressive with my lefty friends about Ukraine, is that this image of America as a snaky colonial backstabber is not helped by us asking a country to disarm themselves and then abandoning them as a historic empire reasserts its roots and says, oh, your culture is fake, you have to speak our language, you have to XYZ. Like that, to me, feels like a really easy argument for a lefty, if they're being honest, to say there's a clear imperialism, we should be against it. And are we really going to hear people say, oh, well, if we went and we helped the Spanish in the Civil War, against Franco, that's actually French imperial, or that's could be people go to such long and far lengths to try to defend inaction. And I think it's because people have a passive view of history. They see atrocities, they see horrible things, and rather than taking some amount of responsibility, like, damn, we're just doing nothing, huh? They'd rather say, oh, we can do nothing. Because if you say you can do nothing, then you have no responsibility for what happened, even when your country made commitments in the past. I mean, it's sad to see, but it's not terribly surprising the amount of people who, when you confront them with like the commitments we've made, they just hand wave them as if they're nothing. But I could imagine if it was their home, or I'm going to say their village in America, that was burning, and we said, help, NATO, come to our aid. And they said, I mean, that was what, 48? When we do this? I don't know. This doesn't seem like our business. There's an ocean separating us,
It's messed up. It is messed up. Unfortunately, like the West has betrayed its allies multiple times, and it's extremely sad and depressing to me. It's extremely horrific.
I wonder about the no-fly zone. I don't think the no-fly zone would have worked during the immediate phases of the invasion. I think it would have to wait till like April or May, once the Russians have pulled back from Kiev, to secure the rest of the country, to protect its industry, to protect its civilian populations. Basically, you would be cornering off a certain section of safe Ukraine when it comes to air attacks versus what is batterable Ukraine. Because if you were to do it in the immediate fallout of the war, the risk for an actual confrontation would be quite substantial. And I'm not saying a Russian jet going down would be the end all be all. The Turks proved that in 2015 isn't necessarily the case. But when you're the president of the United States, you need to be considerate of this, because it's not just like, there's a chance this won't go wrong. If you're talking about atomic weapons, you got to do what's best while also not being gun shy about your interests, or you'll actually egg on scenarios that'll bring us closer to that, because they will push to a point after you don't make your red lines clear. That will mean they might not know when you're being serious or not. It's why Trump's so scary to me when it comes to his red lines. When it comes to his, if you make 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 deadlines, and then you just barrel past every single one, how are you going to make a threat like, whoa, Ukraine can win the war, we're going to do something big? If Trump was to come out tomorrow and really mean, we will nuke you if you do this, how will the Russians believe that? And that's scary.
Yeah.
Trump whittling down his
Yeah.
word, definitely as somebody who's so, shoot from the hip. What if one day he gets in his head after hearing some commentary? Jimmy Kimmel says, Trump, gay, stupid, weak on Ukraine. And he's like, I'm not gay, I'm not stupid, I'm not weak on Ukraine. He goes out there and he says, I will do X, Y, and Z. I will strike Russia if one more drone crosses into NATO territory. We will take physical force. And Russians like, bullshit. We've sent 1 million drones so far. And the logic on the Russian side actually makes sense. That's the worst part, is that the
I
logic
get
from
you.
their
I get you.
perspective to keep throwing drones at the West makes perfect sense. And that's what's scary, is that Trump started to get balls. That might actually be one of the most dangerous moments of the war.
No, that's actually, look, these are all really good points. I actually fully agree with you. Like when I talk about the no-fly zone, I was talking definitely not in February 2022, because obviously that would have been a really spicy moment to do it. I'm talking more like as the months progressed in 2022, I think you could have done that. And look, I agree with you. It's the thing that I have hated the most about the Trump administration has been their constant flip-flopping on Ukraine. I noticed that recently in like the last month, he's been a lot better in rhetoric about Ukraine. But of course, as you make clear, like this is a good point. The fact that there's been so many different deadlines, the fact that there's been so many flip-flops, it makes it very hard to work out like to what extent it's actually true, to what extent like Russians should believe what he's saying, etc. So that makes it very difficult.
So let's we both agree, fuck Russia, right? Okay. So I don't think we need to get into, any more finer detail on that. But I do want to ask you, what is Charlie Kirk's legacy to you?
Okay, let me make clear. Like everything he said about Ukraine, I fully disagree with and I disavow.
Well, let's be clear. It's not just disagree with disavow. He was like 5 steps from Scott Ritter behavior. Like people don't realize how bad he was. He said that Finland is basically Russian. Like the way that he talked,
he said a lot
like
of
type
horrible
of stuff
things
that could have aired on Russia Today, right? And when we hear people talk about what was there, Daria Dugina, I don't hear people like mourning and saying, "Oh, Daria Dugina, the horrible XYZ."
Very different.
Now wait, let me finish. You can't stop me in the middle of the hot take and get me clip chimped. You're gonna kill me. You're gonna kill me. We're in a tense time in this country. Okay.
All right.
Both Ukraine and the United States. And look, I don't think what happened to Charlie Kirk is good. I think obviously it's horrific. I think it's bad. But in these moments, like when we're talking about putting Charlie Kirk on like silver dollars, and we're like naming holidays after him, and we're talking about him. I've heard people say Mike Johnson said the biggest voice contributing intellectually to America in 100 years. Obviously, I will give some amount of leniency, especially to his widow, in the immediate aftermath of his death, for people to go like la-di-da on Charlie Kirk. But this guy, right, when it comes to the deaths of people, was perfectly willing to ignore it when it comes to Ukraine, was perfectly willing to ignore it, and even in some ways justify Russian actions. I don't know if you watched his debate at, I think it was a British university, and he had a debate with a professor, and the ignorance that he showed, he said to him, well, the Ukrainians have canceled elections. They're not a democracy. Would Churchill cancel elections? The amount of ignorance to say something like that, to be not only ignorant of the situation in Ukraine, but to be ignorant of British history, shows somebody that I don't really think contributed that much intellectually to the conversation. If we want to talk about his work really much conversations, but if we want to talk about his work as an organizer, we want to talk about his duty as a father, we want to talk about his duty as a husband, these things are all fine. But people are turning him into some type of political guru he never was.
So, okay, there's a lot of stuff to unpack here. I want to say, obviously, I strongly disagree with everything he said about Ukraine. And there's a lot of takes of Charlie that I never agree with or never liked. Like, even though I've become more philosophically conservative, I don't agree with like what Trump's abortion laws are. I don't agree with like Trump's like gun laws, like the gun laws that you guys have in America. Like, not that I would change it, right? Like in America, I genuinely think you just can't change the Second Amendment. Like it's too ingrained in the culture. But what I mean here is that like, not that I don't necessarily want that for Australia, right? Do you get what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff.
Are you
like
not pro-gun?
As an Australian, I mean, like it's different in America. It's part of the culture. I think it's not part of the Australian culture. So I think it's just like a very different thing. If I was like an Australian who moved to America, I just feel like it wouldn't be my place to be like, you guys have to change your gun culture because it's just unfortunately like a massive part of your culture. And I don't necessarily agree with all of it. Like I think, for example, like AR-15s in the streets is bad. I think like, you know, semi-automatic rifles and stuff like that.
Wait, reel it in. You think
Yeah.
AR-15 should be banned?
I don't know, and I'm not sure if I necessarily believe that. All I'm saying is like,
And
as an
automatic
Australian,
weapons?
I don't. Automatic weapons should be banned. Maybe. My stance is this, right? I'm an Australian. It's not really
Maybe
my
I'm the
place to change
conservative.
America's gun. Look. I support gun laws for America, right? For America, it's your culture. All I'm saying is I don't necessarily want AR-15s in Australian streets. I think that's a pretty fair compromise, right? And what I'm trying to say, right? Like, is if I went to America, if I migrated to America one day, like maybe I probably still wouldn't understand it fully, but I don't think it would be my place to try change it or be an activist against it because it's like it is pretty strongly part of your culture, I think. So why I bring all this up, right? Is like what I'm trying to make clear is I don't like anything he said about Ukraine. There's plenty of stuff he said about guns and abortion and stuff like that I don't necessarily agree with. I wasn't even a fan of his necessarily while he was alive, but I think the big distinction between him and like Dario Dugina, right, is like Dario Dugina was like literally like a full-time wholesale war propagandist for Russia. Like Charlie Kirk, Ukraine was
he never
probably
got paid
never even
for
his
it.
top.
I mean, he never got paid by the same actor she did.
Can I let me try to finish my point, right? Like, yes, Charlie Kirk had horrible takes on Ukraine, but I don't think for him Ukraine was even in his like top 20 issues. Like, I think the core stuff that he talked about a lot was like Christianity, people should start families, people should have kids. I think that in itself is a really good message. As somebody who's like a philosophical conservative, I think it is a good thing to try and encourage people to have families and kids and stuff like that. Because I think it is sad that like a lot of people have turned away from that in the West. And I think it is ultimately the way that people can find the most meaning, the most beautiful meaning in life is like through family and stuff like that. So it's stuff like that that I agree with on Charlie Kirk. What I'm trying to say here is that like obviously there's heaps of stuff I disagree with him on. I don't think that you should have Charlie Kirk on the 50-cent coin. I think that's like silly. But I think it's disingenuous and not right to try comparing to say someone like Dario Dugina because like yes, he had horrible takes on Ukraine, but it's not even in his top 20 issues. I think like I think he was mainly focused on stuff like family, conservative values in America. I don't necessarily agree with everything he ever said, but listen, here's the problem for me, right, Dylan? Like my parents, I come from a conservative family background. My parents like Trump. Again, do they agree with everything that he does? Of course not. If you ask my mum about American gun laws, she thinks that's crazy. If you ask her about American abortion laws, she thinks that's crazy. She's just a conservative person, though, in general, and a lot of conservative people just generically like Trump because he's like the right wing of American politics, right? And there's a lot of cultural connections between America and Australia. And so my understanding of it is when Charlie Kirk gets killed, and he's somebody who represents like pretty much, he represents the voice of a lot of Trump supporters. He was probably one of the top conservative sort of influences in America, probably in the top. I would say, like, I was having a debate with someone and they were like, oh, he was just a random podcaster. And I was like, no, honestly, the equivalent of Charlie Kirk getting murdered would be the equivalent of AOC getting murdered on the left. And again, I think that'd be. I know you sort of make a face at that, but like when you think about it,
let me clarify.
I'm talking about it in terms of influence.
He's not an elected official. I would maybe compare it more to a.
But he has a lot more
because he had the ear of the president. He was a political organizer. But I mean, he's politically influential. I can see it absolutely.
What the reason I say the AOC thing is like, if you're talking about like, okay, who are the most influential 5 people on the left of American politics, and who are the most influential 5 people on the right of American politics? I would probably say
left. If you mean left to mean like Bernie Sanders left, then we'd probably say Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe I would, as a Marylander, I have to say Jamie Raskin just to be nice to him. And probably another member of the squad, Ayanna Pressley or somebody along
like Ilhan Omar or something like that.
Yeah.
Ilhan Omar. And like I would say, if you had to look at like the most influential 5 people on the American right wing, yes, he was an elected official, but I think he was probably in the top 5 most influential people on the American right wing. And again, there's heaps of things I disagree with him on.
Okay, no, I don't agree with that. When we're talking about
legislative,
well, let me clarify my point. When we're talking about legislators, these are people with power who can vote on things, who have representatives, represent districts, who have, they're going into budget deals and they're like allocating money. We're talking about an organizer here. Like a better comparison would maybe be
But let me give you an
what's
example
that
though.
dude
Like,
who organized Bill Clinton's campaign? The old Southern dude who's always angry at the lefty queers. What's his name?
uh, I don't know actually, but what I was going to say though, right, is like I think Charlie Kirk probably had more influence than the average Republican congressman though. You'd probably agree with that, right? Like he was a pretty huge organizer and he was a pretty
Well, he
influential
had
voice in
definitely much
American
more of
life.
a public presence than the vast majority of conservatives. He had a huge platform, and he
That's
was a
my
big
point. Yeah.
organizer. Yeah. He had a lot of influence. That's for sure.
Yeah. So all I'm saying, right, is like I think like okay, at the end of the day, 80 million people voted for Trump in America. It's half the country. And it's like half the country views this guy as basically being, one of the most influential proponents of the way they kind of see the world overall, right? So I think it's going to be extremely traumatic for like 80 million American conservatives to see this guy get murdered in broad daylight and then to see what was pretty widespread celebrations on the left. And again, I think the average liberal opposed it. Every elected official I saw opposed it. But here's the difference though, right? Like if you went onto Instagram, every left winger you saw, like I knew like 20 people I went to university with who were progressive who were like celebrating it. And so people know people in real life who celebrated it. And it's hard to walk that back, right? It's hard to then lower the temperature because this is the way I would say it. This is the way I would interpret it, right? Like, if you would celebrate Charlie Kirk getting murdered, I think you would celebrate basically like my own conservative parents getting murdered because they basically believed in a lot of the same stuff. And like, and my mum's like, here's a funny thing, right? Like, my mum has pretty bad views on Ukraine. I've tried to debate her. I've tried to convince my mum so many different times. I've literally been to Ukraine twice. Like I literally showed her the video footage that I filmed in Dobrapilly and stuff like that. She still has pretty bad views on Ukraine. But at the end of the day, I love my mum, right? Like I can't just hate my mum because we've got different political views. It's really hard. It kills me. It makes me so sad that she has bad views on Ukraine and stuff like that. And I still hope that I can convince her one day. But like, we can't just be in the business of like completely canceling or just like writing off like just huge sections of like the public and our own social lives as well, just because we have different views, right? Like at the end of the day, I still love my mother. Like
Well,
she's the person who birthed
of
me.
course, like my father. I'm one of them queers, and my father is not too plussed about it. But I still love him, I still love my family,
Yeah,
even if we
you get what I mean,
disagree
right?
about
Like,
some things. And I get what you're saying, but I do want to just throw out there that your mom is very different from Charlie Kirk, and the idea that Charlie Kirk, it was his full-time job. He had a gigantic platform. He had influence, and he knew it, and he used that influence strategically. He
I
was
don't think
intelligent, and so when you say things like, "Oh, Ukraine wasn't his top issue," that makes it, to me, worse. It makes it
it's
worse
that.
when you
I
drive
agree with
by
you
an
that
issue where tons of people are losing their homes and lives and
yeah.
everything, and you treat it with zero respect. You go by, I don't know, they're all Russian anyway, and you just keep on going. Like that. I mean, imagine I go
Look,
and say
it was
Hong
horrible.
Kong. You mean China too? Like, who gives a fuck? Like, if that was
Look,
the way that I
no,
talked about
dude,
that, then you. And I'm not saying again that you should do
I
anything but
hate what you
react
said
with
about Ukraine.
horror to his political assassination, if nothing else but the political stability of the country, outside of course, his children and everything else. But when we talk about building his legacy, like if I was to die tomorrow by some Russian drone strike or something, I don't need you or anybody else to go out there and start talking about putting my face on some fucking coin or about how great I was, or start making stuff up about how fantastic Dylan saved
I would do
so
that.
many
I would do
kittens
that,
out of
Dylan.
trees. No, I was in a bathroom eating a hot dog, and I got fucking destroyed or something in a fucking drone. It was not that cool, and you don't need to like
This is where
eulogize
I
me as
disagree with you,
some
dude.
fucking
This is
icon
where
of faith.
this is where I disagree with you, man. Like, if Russia killed you, I would immediately go into the street and be like, "Fucking no-fly zone over Kiev right now. Punish the Russians." Like, I don't know. That's my view. Like, I think
But
when
you can be
people are
angry, you
killed
can
in
be
horrible,
mad about it, but it's one thing to be like, it's wrong that happened. We should do something to stop stuff like that happening again, which I would appreciate if that was to happen to me. But I wouldn't appreciate if people went out there and started like pretending I was something I wasn't, which is what's happening with Charlie. And that's the only problem I have, is
I
that
don't know.
like we
Let okay. Let
can honestly reflect on what this means for the stability and health of the country, of the fact when, you know, Nancy Pelosi's
Can I
husband
say
gets hit
something?
by a hammer, we got everybody joking it. We got elected officials
And
joking
that was
about it. We
wrong.
got
I was
non-elected
fully
officials
against
joking
that.
about it, laughing about it. When Charlie Kirk gets shot in the neck, we have tons of Americans who are like, "Ah, bullseye." When we say tons of Americans, we mean mostly people on social media, not elected officials. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that type of stuff
But they
is
still
out there.
exist. They
We
still
can
exist.
discuss that. We can, but I don't need to eulogize Nancy Pelosi's husband, a warrior of God. Like, I don't need to go out there and do that.
Let me say this though, like, maybe this is where we differ a bit, Dylan, but like, if I got killed by a tanky, if I got killed by communists, and I've had like death threats from these guys for 5 years, and Bad Empanadas tried to post my address before and stuff like that. If I got killed by a communist, I would literally want Trump to drone strike Bad Empanada the next day. like maybe this is retarded, but like,
You can hold that
if I
position
got killed by
regardless
like,
of you get hit.
yeah. I'm just saying though, right? Like, I don't know, maybe I am a more angry person than you or something like that. But I just think unfortunately there are a lot of evil
I'm
people
dead.
out
It's
there.
not like it matters to me, no.
Like, I don't know, if a tanky killed me, I would literally want the next day the government to just like crack down on everything that they do. Discord servers all rolled up. Like literally Bad Empanada drone strike or extraordinary rendition to Guantanamo Bay. Like, I don't know, like that's just me. I hate communists so much. I hate communists so much after so many years of being harassed and stalked and attacked by them and seeing them celebrate atrocities and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know. I think the far left stuff has to be crushed. I don't know. Maybe this is where we differ a bit.
I mean, look, I tankies don't like me. I'm not liked by tankies. But I also I view them as, gross. I don't like them, but I mean, I also don't know how much I view them as a legitimate political threat because they're self-defeating. You might have you might have team fucking okay. This is maybe this is Saturday. I don't usually stream. I've been drinking a little bit, so excuse my uncouth, politically incorrect words. Okay, have you been drinking?
No, I don't drink. I'm like
you're not an Australian. But this is the thing.
Yeah, I know, it's true.
If I'm out there and I get killed or anything like that, I don't want people lying about me. But it's not going to change anything if I die and then people go out and they eulogize me. It's not going to change who I was. It's not going to change what I did in my life. How you die does not change how you live. And so I would rather us have a conversation about what the country needs, how we can support Charlie Kirk's kids if they need that type of support, how we can bring down the tensions, than necessarily needing to honestly, I think it could ramp it up. But again, when it comes to the lefties, the hard lefties, a lot of them are self-defeating. If you have team schizophrenia, right? By the fact that their team schizophrenia, they're self-defeating. By the fact if you're going around, Mao Zedong shall rise again, you're never going to succeed in American politics. So I'm not saying these people are never a problem, never annoying, never make the left look bad, but they, by their own ridiculousness, are self-defeating.
I mean, okay, I get your point here, but let me just let me say one thing, and people could get really annoyed by this, and but I think it does illustrate where we differ, Dylan. Okay, say tomorrow Russia, God forbid, killed you in Ukraine. I would want the correct response by the American government would be to arrest.
I need imagination. No, you need to put a picture in my head. How did they do it?
Like a drone, say you got drone striked by Russia in Ukraine.
Okay.
The correct response by the Trump administration would be to arrest Hassan Piker. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's actually what I believe. Literally, 100%. He posted your fucking doc
actually think?
I don't even know. Maybe I'm trolling right now, but he posted your fucking doc.
That's what I don't get. That's what I said before we went live, Drew. I said the problem with Drew is I don't know where the man starts and the meme begins. And he says, "This is my unironic position." Is it?
I'm laughing right now, but look, this guy literally, he's a communist who posted your docs. He celebrated Russia carrying out atrocities and stuff like that. If you got killed by Russia in Ukraine tomorrow, crack down on Hassan Piker. Genuinely, I don't know. People are gonna clip that and get.
I
really
don't
mad.
want to Jimmy. You know what? You know what you would do, Drew? You know what this would do? You would Jimmy Kimmel Hassan Piker. His streams would get bigger.
Maybe
he'd get more viewership.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're
and
right.
The legacy that you would leave is making the streamer who showed my 9-digit zip code 10 times bigger and get him a bigger house. So no, I don't.
Okay, maybe you're right. Okay, maybe you're right there. Okay, I take back what I said. Look, it's hard. I'm just very bitter against these people. You have to understand, Hassan Piker has literally about 5 different times on his streams called for my death. So it's just I hate these people so much, man.
Well, he said I'm a war tourist pervert, and then he says all sorts of stuff that's completely ridiculous. But I mean that the I mean, so did many people on the internet. Like I gotta, you just kind of
Yeah.
have to deal with it. Look, this actually brings us to a topic I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
about. There was
Yeah.
I don't know if I have it pulled up. I should have had it pulled up, but I don't. There was a display, and I'll just say what you posted. There was a display
Yeah.
that showed a Mexican with a sombrero and two Trumpers, what looked like,
Oh, that thing.
hanging in
Yeah. That was
somebody's
fucked
front
up.
yard. And so the
Oh,
display
you
was
have to
one
admit that was
Mexican
fucked up.
standing next to
You
two
have to admit that.
Trumpers with MAGA hats. Like, and
Oh, that's so bad. You have to admit it's so fucked up.
scarecrows kind of, it's like it's meant as a political display, and they're being hung by the Mexican, and it's meant
Oh, dude,
very
you have to admit that's
provocative
fucked up.
display. Now,
You have to admit it's
earlier
fucked
you
up.
told me that as an Australian, you can't really judge American culture too much and tell us what we have to and what we have not to do. Now, in the United States, we have an obsessive and very stringent culture when it comes to freedom of expression, to the point where the president of the United States accidentally ended up making Jimmy Kimmel one of the most popular people on TV when he's not particularly even that entertaining, in my opinion, right?
Okay, true. That is a good point. That's a good
My point to you is, whether or not that's offensive, whether or not it seems like it's violent, you bringing a guillotine to the steps of the Capitol building is 100% politically protected speech. The president of the United States right now is trying to make it so wait, let me finish. Flag burners go to prison for years, not months, years. That type of speech, whether how provocative it is politically protected, and you calling for them to be arrested is attacking my culture, Drew. Stop being so multicultural.
Okay. Look, I get your point about the fact that I'm not American culture. Listen, okay. I get your point. I'm not American. I'm saying these people should. I think you need to just draw a distinction between like provocative stuff and like actual incitement to violence. And I don't know. I saw that display as like full incitement to violence. And for what it's worth, I think bringing the guillotine to the steps of the Capitol building was also incitement to violence. And I think that also should have been cracked down upon as well. And that's my view as well. So I don't know, like, okay, here's a good example, right? The other day, I think it was like the Department of Homeland Security posted this footage, and it was people protesting outside an ICE facility. It was like one day after that shooting at the ICE facility. It was another ICE facility in the country. People were protesting outside. It was one day or 2 days after that mass shooting at an ICE facility in America. And like the left-wing protesters were screaming, literally, shoot ICE, shoot ICE, shoot ICE, kill ICE. Like, I don't know. Do you think that's protected free speech? Because I would think that like literal direct calls to murder of federal agents would surely not be protected free speech.
No, I don't think if you're going out and you're saying, if you're making actionable calls to violence, then I think that you should be obviously investigated at the very least. I don't know if we need to throw them in prison for years because of their speech. I think that's a little far. I think maybe like probably 2 weeks in the slammer after they cry a little bit, they probably go home and hug their mom. Be like, I'll never do it again.
Yeah, I think
work
that's
at
okay.
Walmart. I think that'd probably be fine. So I don't think we need to throw them in the gulag or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not saying gulag.
Central State Committee would have decided. But when we talk about that display,
I'm not saying gulag. I'm not saying gulag.
You know the band Gvar? Are you familiar with that band?
They're
a band. There's these giant like monster alien uniforms, and they've been doing rock music for like 30 years. Okay, it's not important that you know them. What you need to know is that a tradition at their shows is beheading political figures. A tradition at their shows, they've beheaded the Queen, they've beheaded President Obama, they beheaded President Biden, they beheaded President Trump. Actually, no, they disemboweled President Trump. Let me be clear. I need to be fair.
What's it called? How do I spell it?
It's like GWAR, like war. It's like
okay, I'm looking.
It's not my type of music, but I'm using them as an example of the type of speech that I still believe should be protected. Yeah, GWAR. Yeah. If you look up beheading or something, libs of TikTok.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
The letter they showcase enactments of graphic violence that result in the audience being sprayed with fake blood, urine, and semen. Like,
yeah, not only do they behead,
I have to say, I hate this
Joe
stuff.
Biden's neck blood gets sprayed over the crowd, so everybody can literally bathe in the president's blood. That, to me, as an American, is easily 100% protected speech. Because I get you there. I want you to go as an alien, go find President Biden and behead him at a because it's ridiculous on its face, but they are in and of itself a test of the boundaries of our speech. People who make those types of displays test the boundaries. And when we have people like Donald Trump, who's inherently anti-freedom of expression, this is somebody suing media organizations for over $1 billion because they interviewed Harris wrong. He's saying that news organizations need to be nicer to them if they want to broadcast and have their broadcast license. He's taking out
I think that's
statues
bad.
that have permits to be there in the middle of the night with no warning, completely against the First Amendment. And these are just like the things that I can name off the top of my head. If we wanted to, I could give you example after example, even before he got into politics, of him suing Bill Maher because of his jokes. And so I am uncomfortable as a Yankoid giving the government any more expansive power when it comes to speech outside of what we've already given them.
Okay, look, I get your point. I probably agree with you that like it is protected free speech when like Gua and stuff do it, even though I have to say I find it extremely disgusting and I hate that type of shit. I'm a philosophically conservative man, you know. I don't like you know, like what is it, heavy metal bands like beheading effigies of political figures. I don't like it. In my heart and soul, I fucking hate it. Okay, I agree that like it shouldn't be like
I don't like the
criminalized.
look. I wouldn't do a sombrero Trump MAGA hanging. My point isn't that this speech is great. My point is that we need to protect even some of the grossest speech because in other worlds, our speech would be viewed as a gross speech. Me, if I was to put a display of Putin getting beheaded, should I be treated in some way with the power of the state?
No, because that would be based. That would be based.
Well, that's based because we agree with that. But you know, when it comes to Donald Trump, it's a little different. Even though he's somebody who said, "Wait," Donald Trump said, "Go after women and children in war."
No,
I
think
go after women and children.
No, it's very different. It's very different. It's very different because Trump is a democratically elected leader who was voted by 80 million Americans.
Yeah, but if
like,
you democratically blow up a child, you still blew up like a child. My point isn't to say that it's good to attack these people. My point is that if people want to engage in radical, aggressive, offensive speech, one of my tests I remember talking to people about freedom of expression in China, and one of my easy tests was, can you go in the middle of like the square of wherever you are and just start cursing out the leader of the country in the most vile ways imaginable? If you
I think you should be allowed to do that. Okay, I think you should be allowed to do that. I think it does become a little bit different though, Dylan, when we're talking about like actual, you know, displays of violence and stuff like. Okay, that example, for example, of the Mexican Halloween demonstration where it's like they put out the coffin and they put the effigy of murdered Trump supporters and stuff like that. Okay, like here's an example, right, of difference. Okay, if that had been essentially like a KKK display and they had an effigy of black people being hung, like of course you would surely be against that, right? I'm against that. I don't think that should be protected free speech.
What shouldn't be protected free speech?
Say okay, that example in Texas where
except
it
was white men, like a Klan member or two black people or something.
Yeah, I don't think that should be
protected free speech.
Even clans, even if it was like a KKK. So KKK,
if it was Adam Waffen, it should be protected free speech.
See, that's where I actually differ with you. I do differ. See, I think this is the difficulty, right? I understand that America has a really strong culture of free speech. And look, I don't necessarily want to change that. All I'm trying to say, right, is as someone who's become like philosophically quite conservative and stuff like that, my greatest concern, what I am so terrified, right? What I find terrifying is the prospect of like civilizational collapse and America collapsing into like civil war, 4 years of lead type stuff. And I desperately want to prevent that. And I just think like stuff like that, like where it's like whether it be like KKK demonstrations of like
that type of stuff has
existed
in our country forever. This is not a new thing. Like I remember going down in like West Virginia with my family and seeing some pretty offensive things on people's front lawn, you know, and like the idea of like Obama being like, this is like, oh God, he posted another thing about Obama. I know how to deal with Obama. It's an easy solution, you know, like the kind of offensive stuff that I would hear. And at the end of the day, like I think it's gross, I think it's horrible, but this is constitutionally protected speech. And it's one thing, Drew, it's one thing if you were to say, you know what, it should be taken down. You know, maybe the local housing council or the local like groups should say that's, you know, bringing down our housing values and like, what do they call it? A homeowners association. You know, one of the little homeowners dictatorships comes in and says, you cannot have that on your lawn. I don't like a lot of these homeowners associations, but they go and they do that. Okay. You said they needed to be arrested.
But I would genuinely like if a KKK member put up an effigy of black men being hung, like I would genuinely think that's like should be criminal offense.
That gets posted on social media all the time. I see it's on Twitter every single day. I see people posting. I've seen that Wojak of a trans person hanging themselves almost every single day on X.com.
I see that one.
Who's been arrested for it? And should we arrest people for social media posts like that?
not not social media. Okay, not social media posts, but
Social media
I
posts
look, I
about hanging and lynching people, that's okay, but not okay, but legally okay. Effigies, that's different.
okay, look, look, I get what you're saying here. I understand it's a very fine line. I don't want to see America go down the route where it's like Britain, where literally in Britain people are getting arrested all the time for just social media posts. That's fucking crazy. I hate that. I don't want that to happen. All I'm saying is like direct incitement for violence. There has to be there has to be stronger response to like direct incitement to violence.
Okay,
I
I
think.
agree with that. If
And
somebody says
yeah, yeah,
kill XYZ, attack XYZ, you should go after them. I even think people who like might even be actively just encouraging civil war on social media should at the very least be looked into. If
yeah,
not,
yeah,
if depending on how they make their call, like if they say, here's the local electrical substations, I think, okay, that isn't just libs of TikTok just randomly saying civil war. That's
yeah,
something
yeah,
actionable. You need to move on that. But I agree with you about the risk and the danger of civil war. Like we said, war is
yeah.
the degradation of law. It is the destruction and absence of law. And people don't want that in their homes. People don't want that in their communities. The idea where you're vulnerable, you have nothing protecting you and your family from artillery shells, drone strikes. And this war is going to be a lot different than the last time Civil War hit the shores of the United States. And so I agree that this is something we need to fight against. I think anybody that's calling for civil war or trying to use the moments to increase tension should be socially ostracized from society, pushed out of public
Mm,
commentary, should be viewed
yeah,
as these are people that want you to murder your neighbor. When Andrew Tate goes out there and he
yeah.
says civil war, he wants you to fight and murder your neighbor.
So
When
fucked
Ian
up.
Miles
It is so
Cheong says the
fucked
same
up.
thing, he wants you to murder your neighbor. When libs of TikTok says that they want you to murder your neighbor, depending upon
I
their
fully
political
condemn it.
views.
Like,
And if you
like
think that it'll be their homes burning and not yours, you are a naive fool.
yeah. Look. I want to make it clear as well. Like, I
Not you're a
attacked a lot
naive
of
fool,
people.
but the person who would think that the
No, no,
war
no,
won't
no. I
come
get
for
what.
them.
Yeah, no. Fully agree. And look, I attacked a lot of leftists over their commentary about Charlie Kirk, but I also condemned very strongly. There was a right wing senator in Australia called Ralph Babette, who is like, he's like probably the most MAGA type senator we have in Australia. And he like literally responded to Charlie Cook's murder by going like, the time for dialogue is over. Go out there, destroy the left. And I fully condemn that. And I said, this is disgusting. This guy is literally like a former real estate agent. And he doesn't understand what war is. He doesn't understand what civil war is. He's telling you to go out and like fucking destroy your life and kill people. And like, he's a fucking real estate agent. So it's like, I fully condemn people on the right who also engaged in that rhetoric. There was a lot of that rhetoric as well, right after, obviously, Charlie Cook's murder. My number one concern is I want to prevent civil war. And I think you would know this, Dylan. Like, people think when you talk about civil war, you're talking about, standing armies in the field shooting at each other. It's not like that at all. What I'm talking about, and I think
It's
what you're
machetes.
probably yeah, it's like years of lead. Well, we're talking about the years of lead, and we don't want to have like. I think the most realistic scenario here is like basically the Northern Ireland troubles, but transposed on America, which is like just a fucking horrifying thought, because that would be so many people killed, and it would be just so horrific. So
Absolutely.
I really want to try and prevent that. I really, really want to try and prevent that from taking place in America. I think there's also a growing risk of that in Europe and Britain and stuff like that, and it's a really scary thing.
It is scary, and America's like enemies are trying to prey upon this political tension. When you look at the people who are pushing these civil war posts, like a lot of them are bots. Where do you think these bots are coming from?
Yeah, it's
Why
true.
would bots have an
1000%.
incentive to push in domestic political visions in the United States? It's because the Russians or the Chinese or whatever state actor is interested in American political instability, so they can replace the United States
Yeah.
on the world stage or fill in the vacuums where America has influence. For example, in the Pacific or transatlantic. So this is something that is also
Absolutely. Yeah.
pursued as the state policy of other governments. The Internet Research Agency is public knowledge. What Prigozhin was doing is public knowledge. So it's something that they see as a vulnerability that they want to exploit, which is why I get so particularly offended when I see people who are supposed to be Americans helping them exploit that to try to increase divisions. I think it's a lot of people who either A, have ideas so dog shit that they would never be able to get anyone to agree with them unless they were under the barrel of a rifle. Or B, outside of the ideas being complete dog shit, you're just wait 1 second. I got a message. Oh, okay, sorry. I just need to pay attention because like air raids and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Is that a dog?
Yeah, I got a dog here. Yeah. Hello, doggy. How are you going?
What type of dog is it?
Beautiful creature. Labradoodle. She's very beautiful. She's a very beautiful creature. Only 10 months. I love her so much.
Name?
Bell.
Oh, that's adorable. I
I
completely
love
forgot
dogs
my
so much.
point. Your dog.
Sorry, you're talking about the air raids, and you're talking about the Civil War, and Americans who are kind of like
Oh yeah,
Americans
there's the
who
people who,
cheering
who
on.
who
Yeah,
will never be able to get their ideas unless they have do it under the barrel of the gun. And there's people who I genuinely believe, like Tim Pool, who want to
yeah,
profit off of us killing each other. In the way that he talks about civil war constantly, the way he pushes civil war
it's messed up.
constantly,
Messed up.
it's the way that Americans, when they hear the last time war really touched our shores outside of Pearl Harbor was the Civil War. So when Americans hear
Yeah,
that, that's like the only possibility of war reaching our shores because there's not going to be no Chinese invasion of California. There's going to be no Russian invasion of
yeah,
Alaska. That's unrealistic. If we kill each other,
yeah,
that's a lot more realistic. And so when people
yeah.
hear that, they pay attention to it and he exploits it. He sets out that alarm, drags people in, and unknowingly, I think it's just closer to something like that. Not because those
It's true.
warnings that seem less like warnings and more like prepare.
Yeah, I agree because I fully agree with you there. Like when Tim Pool says it, he's not going like we need to prevent the years of lead, guys. He's actually being like you have to get ready, and like that is fucked up rhetoric. Whenever I talk about this stuff, it's always in the context of this is the absolute nightmare that must be avoided at all costs. And I don't know, it's really scary. Like I remember I had a thought experiment that I posted to Twitter, and I was like, okay, this is actually really interesting. I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because I know obviously like a free speech absolutist and stuff, and that's very fair within the context of American culture and stuff. But I am genuinely interested in your thoughts. So I said like, okay, say that an American Civil War scenario would be like the years of lead, and it's like more than 30,000 people being killed from political violence in any given year, right? That's the definition or the threshold of a civil war, and say that like the killing of Charlie Kirk just theoretically made the likelihood of like civil war go up to like I don't know 25%. Again, this is just a thought experiment. Would you accept I don't know like just like say 50 people who had celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder being arrested and sent to prison for like 1 year if it were to theoretically reduce the odds of civil war from like say like 25% to like I don't know like 5% in America, and with the actual like outcome of a civil war being like 30,000 people killed from political violence in any given year? Just a thought experiment, and I know it's a lot of people are really
if
pissed off when I
arresting
say
people
on
for
Twitter.
speech decreased the likelihood of civil war, and we could prove that through some graph or something.
I'm saying theory because I said as part of this thought experiment, assume that it actually does decrease the risk of civil war. And I actually did get some people who were like, no, even if we went into a civil war, I would still oppose that. So I had some people in America who were so absolutist about it where they were like, I would literally prefer us going to a civil war.
The thing is,
than
if you have these certain rules and you have these certain institutions, like if you start saying, I'm going to bend the First Amendment because this one just seems a little too dicey, right? You have to have a certain standard that can be applied between instances. You can't just do a case by case basis. If that seems, that one, okay, that was, you have to be able to apply some standard or the values by which, defines America is America. Is the things that we do unite each other around each other when we have such Californians and West Virginians live very different lives typically. And so the things that unite them, I think is exactly what stops us from killing each other. And so the thing that I'm scared of, Drew, is okay, if this scenario was true, that if we arrested this one guy or these two guys who were causing all the tensions and that would solve the problem, then I guess you would, in that world, maybe you'd be able to win me over. But my fear is that by destroying the barriers of these values that we have built in the United States, that are the things that do still unite us, irrespective of our huge cultural, religious, and economic divides, then we might actually destroy the few barriers that are keeping us together, that is keeping the Union alive and keeping the longest running active constitution on the planet still going.
Look, that is a fair point, and I think you've actually made a pretty good argument there. When you articulate it in that way, I certainly see your point, and I think you're right. I guess it's hard for me, right? Like, I've sort of I've gotten really into like sort of like Lee Kuan Yew posting and like a preference for like law and order and stuff. Like since, especially over the past year, like just seeing like
I got a lot of questions about that from people on Twitter. Actually.
Like, see, that's the thing. Like, it's, I guess, if you're somebody whose main concern and the thing that you're terrified is like sort of civilizational collapse into like civil war and stuff like that, that's probably why you start liking somebody like Lee Kuan Yew, who unfortunately did have quite like strict methods and authoritarian methods. But it's like, the reason I like Lee Kuan Yew is I still think it's within the framework of an overall relatively free democracy. Like it's not like actually Russia or China or anything like that. I don't know. It's interesting. We can discuss this sort of thing a bit.
Actually, I do need to ask you, do you believe Muhammad Khalil should have been deported?
I actually do. I genuinely do.
Why?
He's not a citizen, and he was calling for like the destruction of like the American empire, and he was like cheering on foreign terrorist attacks and stuff like that. I just genuinely think like his presence, like what does his presence in the country contribute towards America that actually makes the country better?
It's an adherence to its values.
Is he really adhering to America's values? Like he literally hates America, talks about destroying America, and he's like
a
cheered
lot of
on foreign
Americans that hate
Islamist
America.
heretics.
Look, I agree that
It's a
people
bit
who
different.
move
I think it's a
here
bit
and
different
want
when
to
you're a
become
migrant to
citizens
America.
should have a desire, should have a love for America, should appreciate things about the United States. Because if you're going to move here and you're moving here for anything outside of there's an economic opportunity here, you know, we do have a shared culture. We do have a shared identity when it comes to the values that we uphold. You have to be able to live with the fact that your neighbor, like you might be the most like fundamentalist Muslim or fundamentalist Christian or fundamentalist whatever, but you live next to a polycule and you'll just have to deal with it. This is the United States of America, right?
Yeah.
If
See, I
you
don't
can
think
deal
Muhammad
with
Khalil's
that,
like
then
that.
I think you can live here. Now, Muhammad Khalil, I don't know about him specifically cheering on the terror attacks, but my opinion about critiquing America as a position of empire, fine. I don't care. Why would that
It's
mean
not.
that we need to deport
It's
somebody? To critiquing foreign governments,
it's not a
critiquing the
critique though,
United
dude. Like
States, the thing that would only concern me is if he seemed to be some sort of domestic terror threat, or he was actively trying to encourage the killing of people. That would be this like barrier, or he was clearly saying, I don't care about America. I don't want to be a citizen, or I want to be a citizen, but I don't care about a First Amendment. I don't care about the Constitution. I don't know any. I don't want to learn anything about it. Then
like
okay,
this guy does not like American culture and civilization. Like he's literally cheered on foreign Islamist terrorist attacks. I think he's a threat to other Jewish people in America, other minority groups, because he ultimately holds to like a pretty hardcore.
How did he
sort of
cheer
like
on the
Islamist
terror
political.
attack? Did he did he point out a statement or like a tweet or something?
He said that like October 7 was justified, and like basically said like it was a good thing. So
Did he say that, or was
this
that part
guy,
of a joint statement? I'm genuinely asking.
let me go back to it. I'll try find the exact thing. But I know he's done it multiple times. Like he went on Ezra Klein's podcast and he responded to Ezra Klein talking about October 7, basically saying that it was justified, etc., etc. So this guy, I just don't understand. I think it is just the height of. There are people in the chat going like Nazi rhetoric from Drew. But here's the thing, like I just genuinely don't understand. Like, what is the justification for somebody moving to America who does not like America politically and culturally and supports like foreign Islamist terror attacks? I just can't see any justification for that.
Okay.
It's like it's such a bad thing. Like I think at the bare minimum, if you're moving to a country, you have to love the country, you have to be patriotic, you have to support the country. I don't understand like what the justification is for like people who hate America to come to America.
Here's the problem that I'm running into, Drew. Is look, if we can, I don't look. Muhammad Khalil is just, I think, is just one example of what I'm more worried about is a pattern of behavior. If he himself is like, go do terror attacks are cool. You should go kill civilians. If he's saying that type of stuff, then yeah, deport him. I'm not gonna stick my neck out. I think he's doing direct incitements to violence. That's a crime in the United States.
And I do want to quickly say as well. Can I say one thing quickly? Then I definitely don't think that people should be deported for just saying something like free Palestine. I don't agree with that at all. I think you can be a Palestine supporter, that's fine. What I'm saying is like the line in the sand, I think, is like where you're actually saying Hamas is good, Hamas is
here's my question though. Why is he chosen?
Because he's not an American. He's not an American citizen, dude. He's not American.
His aggressively anti-Israel stance, his aggressively pro-Palestinian stance, and his
aggressively anti-American,
campuses, which has gotten a lot of attention in conservative circles, which they see as either anti-Semitic or at least certainly anti-Israel, which they view as a strong American ally. And my concern is, if we just go and pick and choose, and whoever the current president gets to choose, oh, you don't agree with my foreign policy view here, or you don't agree with this here, then I don't think you. Because here's the thing: are they going out there and are they deporting people who support settler violence? Are they going out there and are they deporting the people who are supporting Russian bombing of Ukraine? Are they going out there and deporting all these people, or are they just happy to deport the people who are out there and might flower or sugarcoat or try to play games with what happened on October 7th, which is bad.
Yeah.
But if we selectively choose on how this is enforced, then it becomes the executive branch choosing that these types of advocacy are fine when it comes to these types of statements, when it comes to their pet political projects. But when it comes to ones against them, no, that's not okay.
Yeah. So let me be clear, right? Like, I don't think people should be deported for being anti-Israel. I don't think people should be deported for criticizing American foreign policy. I think people should be deported if they are Islamic extremists. And I genuinely believe Mahmoud Khalil is an Islamic extremist. He believes in political Islamist organizing. He has basically, he was a main organizer of, he organized rallies at Columbia University that literally said, destroy the American empire. And it's like, how can you justify that guy?
I've been on these campuses before. Is he a religious extremist, as in he's like, homosexuality is a sin and you must be stoned, you are XYZ? Or is he a lefty political radical who's like, political Islam is a tool against oppression, XYZ?
I think it's more the latter. It's more the latter, but I still think that's extremely bad for America. It's extremely bad for Western civilization to have people like that.
Well, anybody justifying a terror attack, obviously that's bad. But my main concern here, again, is if that's the standard, should we also deport anybody who supports settler violence? Anybody who's ever endorsed settler violence? Anybody who's ever done that? Who said, look, that's the land of the Jews, that they deserve it, and they should have left.
Look, if somebody is if somebody is living in America and they're not an American citizen and they're literally calling for genocide, then it's a very strong case that they should be deported. In any case, I think.
Okay, but so if somebody says they support settler violence, should they be deported from the United States?
Look, if somebody's not an American citizen and they're literally saying that people should go out and like genocide Palestinians, I don't think that they should be in America either. I don't think people who support genocide should be in America, but I do genuinely think overall the threat of Islamism, political Islamism, is infinitely greater than anything from Israeli settlers in America or whatever. I genuinely believe that very strongly. And there's just a massive cultural gap between like Western civilization.
Wait, political Islamism is a threat to the United States.
What do you say? Sorry.
Okay, I maybe you can talk. I'm not a European. Okay, I spent time in Europe, but do you think it's a threat to the United States? Like political Islam could take over?
Yeah, I've not take over, but I think it is definitely a threat to America, considering there's been multiple terrorist attacks in America that have killed like literally thousands of people at this point.
Well, yeah, I think there's a threat of like religious extremism and bombings that are associated with that. Whether it be, of course, you have 9/11, the most probably has the most devastating kill count. Then you've got Timothy McVeigh. Then you've got all these other people. You've got the Boston Bears.
Here's a good theory, right?
You've got all this type of religious bombings. I just I don't know if
I've got a great question for you. I've got a really good question for you, right? Okay, remember when Hassan Piker said America deserved 9/11?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. Say there's somebody who's not a citizen, they're on a tourist visa in America, and they say that, and they're a Muslim extremist. Do you really think that they should be in the country and their right to free speech should be protected?
Well, if they are religious extremists and they're coming here and saying 9/11 and they're not a citizen, like 9/11 is good, we should do more 9/11s. I mean, it's hard to say because I think advocating for more 9/11. Look, I don't think they should be here. If you don't like the country, you probably shouldn't be here for obvious reasons.
I think that's like a normal view. I think that's a normal view.
Making it like if you're going to deport somebody for speech, you have to. I think it has to be pretty clear cut. I think it has to be like the type of standards that you have with slander cases because I just see how it could be easily abused. And so I agree that there is some line, but I think that line should be basically as far as possible.
Okay, I mean, look, I understand your point, and I think that's pretty fair. I mean, there is a big problem, though, where it's like, how do you deal with the fact that there are people who've moved to America as like sort of Muslim migrants, they've naturalized, they've become citizens, and then they do stuff like Hassan Piker, where he's like literally justifying 9/11 on stream. Like that is a big problem for the culture.
Well, no, I think Hassan Piker is like a perfect representation of an American. He is, very consumerist, covered in types of like luxury clothing. He's streaming, playing video games all the time. He's made his future here. He's employing Americans. He's living the American dream, even to the point of giving your hot, spicy Yankee tanks. Like I disagree obviously what he said about 9/11, but
I think he's an American citizen. He's an American citizen. He's American in a legal sense, but I think culturally he pretty much hates America.
He doesn't seem to be particularly. I mean, I don't know. Like hate America. I think he hates what we do.
He has actually. Dude,
I think he has melted his brain with America bad syndrome to the point where he is missing the forest for the trees when it comes to a lot of world conflicts. And I think that
Like,
one set track mindset is negative. But I also know so many people like on college campuses who were just born here who believe that. So I don't know if we should really be saying like, okay, well, since you're a citizen, you have extra free speech rights.
I'm not necessarily saying they should have extra free speech rights.
But if Hassan can say that about 9/11 and an immigrant can't, don't they?
Well, Hassan is an immigrant himself.
Well,
I don't think he. I mean, he's obviously naturalized.
Citizens. Once you're a citizen,
he's unfortunately naturalized.
Okay,
He's unfortunately naturalized.
You've got in the dinghy.
I understand that he's unfortunately naturalized, but I honestly think of Hassan Piker as just a paperwork American. I don't think he actually likes America. I think he basically hates America, and I think that's really bad for the culture. And I think it's people like Hassan Piker who are actually creating this massive backlash against immigration in America and across the Western world. Because it is a really tough thing. Like, my family descend from migrants to Australia, right, 60 years back, and I genuinely think that people who are migrants should be patriotic and should love the country and should be thankful. I don't think that people should be going around doing what Hassan Piker does, and literally as a first generation American, literally cheering on 9/11 and terror attacks. I think that is just like a disgusting way to be. I think it's a disgusting way to act. I'm talking culturally right now rather than legally. Like, I think it's a huge problem for the culture. Like, if you have like first generation migrants like Hassan Piker who are going in and then they're just like literally cheering on terrorist attacks and talking about how much he hates America all day, like, that's a horrible problem for the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that if you're going to move here, you shouldn't cheer on, or I mean, he didn't cheer on 9/11, at least. He said that it was.
He kind of did. He said it was justified.
He said we deserved 9/11, and then he clarified his position to say, due to our imperial policies in the Middle East, this was the backblast of what was caused by our act. He's not cheering it on as much as he is, trying to put the background, what he would say, putting the background context upon why it happened. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it still, but I don't know if I'd call it cheering on.
This is a good question, though.
Like him saying that America deserved it. America didn't deserve it. Definitely when you talk about those civilians, they didn't deserve it. Nobody deserved it. And when we talk about like America deserved 9/11, what did that mean for the people? Like what did that mean for the people of Afghanistan? What did that mean for the Middle East? Hell, that's having effects on South America. It's the AUMF that is allowing Trump to strike Venezuelan boats. Like the out effects of 9/11 is multi-generational and devastating.
There's somebody in the chat who says, I know Drew would be too cowardly to say that to Hassan's face. No, I would just straight up say it to his face. I've said it multiple times. I've posted it like dozens of times, and he sees my tweets because he's
like, I don't think Drew would be too cowardly to say that to Hassan's face. I don't think anyone would be too cowardly to say to Hassan's face. I don't think Hassan is an intimidating figure, to be quite frank.
So someone said Hassan's born in New Jersey. Sorry, I actually didn't know that. I didn't realize he was born in America. But look,
was he born in New Jersey? I thought he was born in Turkey.
I thought he was born in Turkey, but like at the end of the day, like he grew up in Turkey, I'm pretty sure, and like he does talk about himself.
New Jersey, New Brunswick. Huh.
Yeah, so I don't know. Look, Hassan talks about himself as like a kind of first generation migrant. Like that's how he kind of frames himself. He says, "I grew up in Turkey."
Sworn he was 40.
But anyway, all I'm saying, right, is like, he talks about himself basically as a first generation migrant. He says like, I was born in Turkey, I grew up there. And then he moves to America, and then he's just talking about like how much he hates America all day. He's talking about, America deserved 9/11, one of the worst terrorist attacks that ever took place in American history and stuff like that. And all I'm saying here, right, is like, I think it's so bad for the culture for like first generation migrants to act like that and behave like that. And it creates a massive backlash. Really does.
Okay, but in this case, like he was born here, so like does it create a backlash against what?
I think it just creates a backlash overall against like Muslim migration to America. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing, but I'm just saying like if there are Muslim migrants to America who then cheer on 9/11, like obviously that's going to make people pretty unhappy. I think that's just like a statement of fact.
I agree that if people get that perception, or it's created by those people saying that, which they shouldn't say that. Yeah, obviously that's going to be devastating for relationships between immigrant communities. I will say though,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
This is kind of uniquely attuned to take in immigrant populations. We've got to have a pretty decent history at it.
All I'm saying though is like it's pretty devastating for relations between like migrant communities and non-migrant communities to have like people like Hassan Piker who talk about themselves as immigrants and then just go out and just say America deserved 9/11.
Like, we took in so many Sicilians and we're still functioning as a country. That's an achievement in and of itself.
I mean, that said though, I've had these long debates and discussions with this guy on Twitter called Shagzadeh. He's a really smart guy. He's like a Shia Muslim scholar and he's like one of my favorite Muslim guys. He's a really smart guy, Shagzadeh. And even he says this. He goes like, the amount of trouble that was created from like just even like the Sicilian kind of mafia and stuff like that. It did actually change American culture to an extent because they had to kind of invent like RICO laws to try and like crack up these mafia gangs and stuff because. And a lot of people make the argument that like the RICO laws are really illiberal. Like it, so in a way that America kind of had to sacrifice some of its liberal kind of. America had to make it kind of like a sacrifice in how its legal system operated as a liberal legal system to try crack up the Sicilian mafia, and that in itself is kind of a sad thing. And not saying that I think Italian migrants overall have been a great benefit to America and across the West, of course. And I'm literally a Greek migrant, so I can't even talk. But I'm just saying like all I'm trying to make the point is like, and Shagzadeh makes this point. He's literally a Muslim migrant himself. It's like there are these big cultural trade-offs that do take place, and it does take, like in the case of Italian migrants, it actually did take generations to assimilate people. Even in the Greek community, like my family's like third, fourth generation, and it takes generations, I think, to assimilate people pretty fully.
Yeah, it's also questions about where people go. Like, for example, if you get a bunch of people in an enclave and you keep them in an enclave, it's going to be much harder for you to integrate those people. Whereas if they're dispersed amongst populations that they're forced to live next to people who are different than them, not only is there gonna like, I think that kind of eliminates this in-group out-group mentality immediately because you're forced to kind of be part of the group, but it also means that like you're kind of forced to learn the language. You're forced to integrate with people who are different than you. You're kind of forced to figure out the pluralistic values of the society. And so, I mean, a lot of it has to do, I think, really with management. And I think that we've gotten through time better and better in the United States at managing immigration, honestly. People talk about how bad it is now, but I mean, you should go look at the old cartoons and stuff they were producing in like the 1920s and 10s and such.
No, look, I actually think that you are right to an extent that America's gotten better with dealing with migration over time and stuff like that. I think it's a lot worse in Europe. I think Europe just struggles with integration like on a much deeper and more profound level because like Muslims in America are actually quite integrated. Like you look at Texas and these guys have like massive pickup trucks and they actually do assimilate like I think it's partly because like probably migrants to America are much more educated and stuff like that, whereas Europe was taking in a lot of people who like you couldn't really verify where they even came from. And I think there's been some pretty big disasters in Europe in terms of assimilation and integration and like, you know, massive ghettos that have formed and unfortunately a lot of violence and stuff like that. So it's very difficult, man. Like I'm trying my best. I want to try and prevent like civil conflicts, civil unrest, civilizational collapse. I'm really worried that the state of things right now across a lot of the Western world is getting really grim.
Yeah, I think I'm worried about political resurgences of like illiberal parties who are trying to offer the same dog shit solutions that have never worked to the problems that we face today. I am worried about that.
Can we discuss this? I think this would be really interesting. I had a post. Let me send it to you. Can I?
Sure,
do I send it to you
I'm willing
Discord,
I'm willing to discuss whatever it is. Send it to me.
Yeah, okay. Let me send this to you because this is like my theory of like how do we stabilize the situation. Hang on, okay. I'll send it to you over Discord, and I don't know. Maybe you can put it on your screen somehow or something like that. But let's discuss it quickly because I think this is my analysis of right-wing populism, why it's on the rise across the Western world, and I've got a proposal to try and stabilize the situation and make things less worse. But you might disagree with it, so it'd be interesting to discuss.
Okay. 1 second. Let me see if I can get this up on the screen here. Let me just move us down. There it is. I'll read this for the people at home.
Let's go through it.
White demographic decline is at the core of the rise of right-wing populism across the Western world. Governments could lower the tensions if they introduced Singapore-style migration policies to ensure demographic stabilization and cultural continuity. Singapore was 77% Han Chinese in 1970, 74% Han Chinese in 2020. It is still a diverse and multicultural society. They just don't want Han Chinese to become a minority. If progressives were pragmatic, they would just accept this policy in order to prevent backlash against long-settled migrant groups already in the West. But instead, some leftists like Mélenchon and Corbyn actually seem to believe it would be a good thing to push white people into a demographic minority. Mélenchon talks about the creolization of France as a positive step towards the end of history. Mainstream Democrats used to engage in outright demographic triumphalism, arguing that changing demographics would forever prevent future right-wing victories in American presidential election. This theory collapsed in 2024 as Trump made major inroads with Hispanic and Black American men. Part of this was by convincing these groups that they were part of an overall heritage of American identity that was being threatened by mass illegal immigration. Anyway, my point is that progressives in the West would stop doing left-wing great replacement demographic triumphalism posting if they were in any way serious about lowering the political temperature across much of the West. They could prevent the return of widespread ethno-nationalist thinking if they stopped freaking people out with left-wing great replacement triumphalism and adopted a pragmatic Singapore-style model which would erase some level of multicultural diversity and protection of long-settled migrant communities. But
sorry, I would say ensure some level of multicultural diversity and the protection of long-settled migrant communities. So I'm actually trying to say, like, we want to protect ethnic minority groups from a backlash from like the far right populism and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you keep going.
But they can't really seem to help themselves. I think most of them are blank slatists in the sense that they refuse to make any cultural distinctions between any groups of people anywhere. Many of them are post-nationalist in the political feeling and look down on anybody with conservative attachments to place, community, ancestry, and cultural continuity as irredeemable chuds. And I think they believe that somehow making white people a minority in every country on earth would solve racism once and for all, even though, one, white people didn't invent racism. We did it? I thought we got credit for that. Damn it. Every group of people on the planet is capable of racism, as evidenced by constant ethnic conflict throughout the entire world over the course of the entirety of human history. Two, they're actually just massively raising the saliency of race as a political issue for white people who heretofore were one of the most tolerant groups of people on the face of the entire planet through the 1970 and 2020 period. If you look at surveys, the level of ethno-nationalist feeling among white people over the last 50 years has been among the lowest in the world, which is why white countries were the first in modern history to actively encourage non-discriminatory immigration policies.
So I'm interested in your
Thank you
thoughts
for coming to
this,
this TED Talk. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, and I said one thing as well. I said I believe that this would actually appeal to ethnic minority groups because we can protect them from the actual like insane Hitler types who are trying to like advocate like full-scale purges. We say no, we'll ensure and protect a level of ethnic diversity and cultural diversity in our societies. We just make people less freaked out about mass demographic change.
So I'm an American, and I grew up in gorgeous Prince George's, Maryland, which is a majority black county. It's actually one of the wealthiest black counties in the country. It's where Frederick Douglass is from. For anybody who might, care a little bit about American history. And so I grew up surrounded by black people. I was usually the only white kid in my class, or I was one of maybe two. And there was three white kids in my entire graduating class. And I found out in the last year that one of them was my cousin. So,
Okay, right.
I was surrounded by people of different races. I don't give a fuck about the race. I don't care about like whether they are coming from German, Mexican, Somalian. Like none of that really matters to me. Culture, values, that matters to me. Whether or not the type of man behind the skin is the thing that ultimately matters for me. And so if we were making sure that people who are coming from countries that have a less developed view on, say, the rights of the individual, or coming from a country that has different views when it comes to civil liberties, different views when it comes to certain sexual or religious minorities, that you would have to make sure that you're not bringing in a huge percentage of the population into one city or one community with no knowledge of exactly what are the values that they're bringing. Are they transferring with our values? Are they adopting our values? Or are we essentially going to cause a crisis in these small communities as people not only face a housing crisis as, housing prices go up and there might not be enough to replace it, but you could also, isolate these people and create that sort of a backlash. I also believe the backlash could happen.
And I want to say that's all really well said. That is really well said. And I do also want to say, like, it's not for me about skin color at all. It's more about culture. That's what I'm interested in. But yeah, sorry, you keep going.
Got it. It's just, it seemed to be all about white people, and it's like white demographic, white this, white that. I don't really care about white.
No, I don't really care about that either. I'm just saying, like, I think that's actually what is freaking people out, and I think that's why there is so much far right populism in the world today. So,
do you think we need like a white quota in this country?
No, I don't think that at all. I think all I'm saying though is like, sorry about the dog. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about skin color or quotas in that sense. All I'm saying is, I think that is why people get freaked out about mass migration. I think that's actually at the core of the doggy. Sorry, shh. I think that's why people are getting so freaked out about mass migration because it's just mass demographic change, and it's not necessarily about skin color, but it's actually more just a proxy for culture and all that sort of stuff. And that's what I'm talking about, like mass cultural change, mass demographic displacement.
Yeah, I think. By the way, the dog disagrees. The dog agrees with me. Okay, obviously,
She's barking at something. I don't know what it is.
obviously. But I mean, I agree that culture, values, these things matter, and this is something that if a society values this, should be protected, should be promoted to some extent. I'm not really against that. It's good that we agree that it has nothing to do with race. That if, well, let me put it this way, and this is not something I care about. Like, if tomorrow everybody in America was black, would that matter to you if they all had the same values?
Like, look, I think if you just completely swap, like if just white people just
snap your fingers.
evaporated, like I don't know. I think if white people evaporated, like that would be pretty bad. I mean, it's like
I mean, like it'd be. I think blue eyes are pretty. I'm a little biased in that category, but you know, there's certain things that would be, but to me, like that stuff. Like I don't believe 300, 400 years from now, my ancestors need to look of the complexion that I have,
I don't
or
think it's not as necessarily strict as that. All I'm saying is that like if you just say like flip a switch and suddenly
I'm just trying to
everything is
figure out how
different.
much race
Like,
as a factor matters to you.
like here's a good example, right? Like, okay, Japan is like, I don't know, like 98% Japanese or whatever. If we could flip a switch tomorrow and Japan was just completely like every single person in Japan was Irish ethnically, but then they spoke Japanese and they had the same Japanese culture. I still think people would be like, wait, what happened to Japan, right? Like,
Well, I mean, people
because I still
obviously
think
people would ask questions if all of a sudden a leprechaun led the Japanese, but
that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't.
That's my
But that
response to your thing where you said if
how
everyone in
wasn't about
America was
like whether
black.
or not people would notice. I was just trying to figure out if that matters at all to you, because to me, culture, values, these are things that are tangible. These are things that you can hold on to, irrespective of your skin color or whatever. That to me matters.
Yeah,
The skin
look,
color to me is next to worthless, if not worthless in
yeah,
its entirety,
look,
as a quote. Like, because when I look at this, it's white demographic decline. White demographic decline is at the core of the rise of right wing populism. So I would just say to ask you, can we
and I'm not necessarily
could we
endorsing
instead
that. I'm
just
just
like
saying, do you think that's
legislate,
actually?
make
I'm,
sure
I'm
that people come here, either are coming here because they have some culture and values that are American, or they're coming here because they want to adopt it and they want a taste of that dream and it sounds nice.
let me just quickly clarify as well. Like, I'm not necessarily endorsing this. What I'm saying is like okay, if I asked you this question, right, I think you'd probably agree with me. Would you agree that probably a major part of MAGA feeling why MAGA has become a major force in American society is white conservatives are concerned that they'll become a white minority in the country?
It is probably one of the contributors. I can't say if it's
I'd say it's a. I
40,
reckon it's
30,
a.
but it's a contributor.
I reckon like fear of demographic change is a major part of it. And look, I actually don't think it's necessarily. I don't think people necessarily. Obviously, there are racists who genuinely just are obsessed with skin color. For me, I don't care about skin color. I'm talking about the wider culture. And look, you do have the thought experiment where it's like, okay, if America was completely the same culture but the entire people was different. Look, I think ancestry is a part of a conservative view of the world. Like, you also do care about ancestry. You do actually care about, to some extent, like I think there should be some sort of like continuity between like my ancestors and my future descendants, right? So that would be my response to you saying like if you could flip the switch and suddenly the whole country was like completely ethnically different but the culture was the same. I still think ethnicity is a part of it. It's not the only part. It shouldn't be people shouldn't be judged by ethnicity. All I'm saying is that like anyone who has a conservative attachment to place, nation, ancestry, culture, and stuff like that, like they will care about like a certain amount of continuity between ancestors and future descendants.
I remember I don't know if I called this conservative pitch, but this was a pitch from maybe a classical liberal pitch of a post-race society. The idea that is
I
not
don't
a
think that's
factor that
possible.
people consider. You don't think a post-race society is possible?
Okay, people said that a post-race society was possible after Obama, and did Obama's election create a post-race society?
No, but I don't know why
Of course not.
Obama would be the ultimate. We had a black president.
I know,
Racism
I
is
know.
over. All
Yeah.
races. Like I don't think
Well, a
anybody
lot of
was
liberals,
saying that.
but a lot of
People were
liberals,
saying that
a
this
lot
is
of
the
liberals
sign
thought that would happen.
times
Though.
are changing, which was true. I mean, after
I
Obama
mean,
became president, we've had not only another black person run for president, a black woman run for president, and get pretty close.
yeah. All I'm saying is like, sorry. So, what was the context here again about? Oh yeah, no, there were some liberals who basically sort of thought that like the election of Obama would hasten a post-race society. I would love to have a society where nobody cared about race, but unfortunately, I think we're very, very far from that in basically every single country in the entire world.
Don't you think that if we make race quotas for immigration, if in order to
No,
try to,
that's not what I'm arguing.
so you just want
Yeah.
culture quotas, you don't want, so we don't need to have a
No,
majority of white people in this country. That's not a concern.
not. Oh, by the way, I think we're not actually. Hang on, no, we are on. No, we're back live on your thing. Look, I would say I'm not talking about race quotas. I'm saying that migration should try and reflect the exact, like, try as best as possible, like Singapore does, to reflect the exact demographics of American society. So American society is like what, like 60% white, 15% black, 25% or 30% Hispanic. It should be a mix. I think it should be a mix to stabilize the demographics of the society, rather than having mass demographic change that freaks everybody out. And it's a conservative viewpoint to try and stop the rise of ethno-nationalist feeling, because what I'm concerned about is that the current amount of migration that is occurring in Europe, America, Australia, it is actually raising the saliency of race as a massive amount in the population, because the mass demographic changes are occurring.
Yeah, no, I have no interest in that. I have no interest. I want anybody who can contribute to the United States, irrespective of the color of their skin, to come to the United States and contribute.
Yeah, and I'm not judging them by skin. I'm talking.
Well, the thing is, if we're managing demographics,
I'm saying
in a
by
way
ancestry.
To manage, only need to keep 66% white people, 13% black people, 20 to something percent Hispanic people. If we do that, we're ultimately going to have to tell people. The majority of people who want to immigrate to the United States are not Europeans, by the way, especially right now. And you're going to have to tell people who are completely contributing candidates, I'm sorry, you can't come here because we're worried that your existence in our country is going to make people racist.
Okay, but America, to an extent, already does this.
It feels like a racism holding America back from its full potential.
What I'm saying though is America already has country quotas, right? So I'm pretty sure there's a cap on the amount of people who can come from any one country in any one year. And so isn't that itself discriminatory?
I didn't say that there shouldn't be any amount of discrimination. I just said out of all the factors that we should consider, race should not even be on the board.
I'm not necessarily, again, I think race is the wrong way to talk about this. I'm talking more in terms of like nationality.
You talked about it as 66% white people and 13% black people. If you want to say what do you want to do?
Why does
40%
Christian, 30%
Islam? I have no clue what the way you'd want to do it, but you framed it racially.
I'm talking more about, rather than race, it's more actually a question of nationality / cultural / sort of like civilizational / culture type thing. Because it's like we all know that, like, here's a good example, right? Like in the past.
Oh, you need them to be Western. That's what you mean.
I think that's a big part of it. Because, like, let me explain this to you, right? Like, there was a long time where white ethnics were considered like an ethnic group in America. And then now they're kind of just considered to be like assimilated white people. So I'm saying like maybe 60% of if the population is like 60% sort of like Western, keep migration at maybe 60% Western, but you can still have a strong level of diversity as well. It's not, this would actually still allow for a large amount of diversity, still allow for a large amount of multiculturalism and stuff like that, but it would just try and stabilize things so that people don't get so freaked out and so that there is not a rise in ethno-nationalist backlash. Because I'm trying to avoid stuff like Trumpism, right? And I genuinely think the reason why Trumpism is currently currently in charge in America is because, like, right-wingers got so freaked out by mass demographic change that they basically were like, remember when they talked about the 2016 election as the Flight 93 election? And they talk about politics in such existential terms where they're literally like, this is our last election, this is our last hope. If we don't get elected now, then the demographics mean that we'll never get elected ever again. Conservatism will be destroyed in America. Like, this is how they talk about politics. They talk about politics in such an existential way, right? And I'm just like trying to say, like, the reason why I think people are so panicked talking about politics in such an existential way, and then that feeds into their tolerance for a rising amount of authoritarianism, their tolerance for Trump doing crazy stuff, is because they see politics in such an existential, scary fashion, right? And I'm saying, if you were to just like stabilize the situation and just say, we're going to stabilize the demographics of the America, we're going to stabilize the migration situation, I genuinely think that like Trumpism would not be in charge of America.
As we're talking about like Western civilization, it's very vague. It's, you know, everybody.
I know it's vague. I know it's
Western,
vague.
you know, it's, and I understand what you're trying to get at. But I mean, this is just be a question of, again, legislating the type of people we would want to come into the country. But what you're saying about these values and Western values, the idea of what you view Western values, what somebody else might view Western values, is very different. I think somebody in Hungary who might support Viktor Orban views Western values is very different than what I view as Western values. Somebody supports Fico in Slovakia, probably different as well. We can go down to, we go to Serbia, we go to wherever, and I'm sure we're going to have a very different interpretation of what's Western values when it comes to certain maybe amounts of religiosity versus civil liberties versus XYZ. But the only reason I bring that up is in this country,
I think
there are a bunch of people that don't adhere, who are Americans, who were born here, to those values. Either they see, for example, the president of the United States take anti-free speech action and they say, or they see certain actions taken against the Constitution, or they see certain violent political action and they clap like seals. So there's a bunch of things that you would probably define in your head as these are Western values that I see on a constant basis getting violated domestically. And so while I agree that we shouldn't like actively open the gates to anybody who does not love or wants to come in and change America from what makes America the best parts about it, but I also think that our bigger crisis isn't with the immigrant, it's with the people at home losing their way.
Okay, but here's something where maybe you're gonna think it's crazy or whatever. But this is actually a theory I kind of developed with Shag Zadeh, who's like, Muslim Sufi scholar guy living in New York City. And part of our thesis of Trumpism and why there are a lot of people who are Trump supporters who don't necessarily like Western values, it's like almost like a kind of third worldist movement in some ways. Like there's an element of Trumpism that is kind of like that kind of doesn't like the West and supports BRICS and stuff like that. And part of this, and again, you might like get mad at me, right? But it's kind of like partly Trumpism is also driven by changing demographics in American society. Like if you look at like some of the most brutal ICE agents, like some of these guys are like not necessarily like Western. I think that's true. Like maybe I get cancelled for saying that, but like I don't know. Like okay, here's a really good example, right? Valentina Gomez. You know that Trump supporter Valentina Gomez, and she like speaks.
The one that executed migrants on like
yeah,
by the
exactly
way,
right.
The question is that constitutionally protected speech too?
No, I don't think that should be. And what I was going to bring up when it comes to Valentina Gomez is like, do you think Valentina Gomez is like an example of a migrant who respects like American culture and Western culture? And we both say no. We both say no. Right?
It depends what America, because Trump's America, she sounds like some people I know in West Virginia. Honestly, I remember hearing this.
What I'm saying though is like,
I remember hearing I'm with my dad. Where he's drinking a cold one. I'm sitting there. He's like, Dylan, do you want a joint? Dad, I'm 16. Oh, never mind. Anyway, with the Middle East, how can we deal it? I don't know. We'll just turn into a giant glass crater. That type of things I've been hearing in my country for a very long time. So in some ways, Valentina Gomez is actually being quite a Yankee Doodle dandy. But I agree that for the aspirational values, for the idea of America, that shining city on the hill, she is inherently contradictory in the way that she talks and the way that her rhetoric is increasing violent tensions in the country.
What I would say about Valentina Gomez is like the types of politics like she wants to import to America are like Latin American Cordillo style politics. Like it's like, do you get what I mean, right? Like it's like the right wing authoritarianism of Latin American countries. She wants to have that in America, and like that's an example of a migrant who's taking like, and she's like white or whatever, but like she's taking pretty bad cultural values from a different part of the world and trying to transpose that onto.
Let's say I grant that. I know tons of other creators who have positions that are very similar to hers, who were born here, who didn't take it from anywhere, who got that homegrown, right? And so I mean,
that's true. That's
that
true.
we don't want to add any fuel to the fire if we're going to be opening the door into new people. If we already have a problem with 3 people who don't exactly know how the country works, You know, maybe adding 1 or 2 more might be a problem, but I'm fine with increasing the stringency on like citizenship tests. I'm fine like doing certain
Yeah, look,
things to try to make sure that
maybe
the
that's
people
the
who are
solution.
coming here not only want to come here, but there's a certain question of like some people are like they need a college degree not because they want to hire you based on the skills you learn, but to show that you can actually put in the effort, to show that you care enough. And I think that, you know, when it
Yeah,
comes to the citizenship process, there's a certain extent to that as well.
like, yeah. Look, I agree with all that. I guess here's a good question though. Like, so when it comes to, okay, like you would agree, right, that like the southern border, illegal immigration, that was a huge part of the Trump election, right? And so, like, if you want to prevent Trump from being elected, like, would you agree, like, liberals need to be like way tougher on the border and stuff?
I think they need to be, I mean, tough. I mean, it depends on how you define tougher. I think that they should, if people are
Yeah,
trying to cross the border, they should catch them if they can at the border. And I think they also need to
yeah,
hire tons of more immigration judges. They need to do such transformative change that would make people not make the trip like that in the first place and not pay the coyotes that they pay the coyotes to get them across those deserts. So I think it's like, yeah, we should be, I guess, tougher when it comes to like literally physically holding the border. But when it comes to like, we need to
yeah.
reform the system, or all we're going to do is we're going to add, okay, now they're using a ladder. Oh, now they've attached drones to their back and they're going to find other ways to
What
get in.
to what extent? To what extent do you find deportation of illegal immigrants permissible? Like, in what circumstances?
I think if somebody is obviously anybody's a violent criminal, which was what Trump campaigned on.
Yeah,
It was all violent criminal,
yeah,
this violent criminal that. Like for example, in this post you posted about like how Hispanics voted for Trump, and you said that a lot of that had to do with the fact that they bought into the idea that they're part of American culture, and it's these new
yeah. I
people
think that is
coming
part
like.
of it.
But once Trump started to enact his immigration policies, his popularity in the Hispanic
That's true.
community plummeted because it wasn't the
I mean, that is true.
murderers
That
and
is
the
true.
rapists
That
and
is
the
true.
criminals in vast majority of instances. It turns out Joe Biden wasn't just like letting like the annual murder festival just like gather every year without picking everybody up. And so once they ran out of the easy grabs, they started going for everybody, going for people outside of Home Depot, and started like, for example, like in this, when we say
Yeah,
tougher on immigration, currently, ICE officers don't have to identify themselves. They can cover their face. They can act like thugs on the street. And to me, if somebody with a face mask, no identification, grabs me on the street, my first instinct is go to the knife in my pocket, right? That's not safe. That's not safe for America. That's not safe for the people they're
mm.
engaging with in law enforcement. And that's not safe for the officers themselves. So when you say be tougher, I just want to emphasize that, yeah, there's a question about holding the border physically, but what we need is reform, I think.
Look, I get you there. I get you there. I do think that. I guess my stance would be that people who have been in the country for like 30 years, who have never committed a crime and stuff, I don't think that they should be deported. I think people who arrived like really recently, maybe in like the last 2 years, or people who are involved in crimes and stuff like that, or
Fair enough.
ideological extremism and stuff, I think they should be. I think like here is a big problem I think with democratic policies. My understanding of the sanctuary city policy is essentially that, like the a lot of these urban democratic cities will prevent ICE agents from literally going to county jails and stuff like that to like round up migrants who are in jail and stuff like that. Like I surely you would think like I don't know like I think surely they should be allowed to be deported if they're literally sitting in a prison cell because they've committed a crime. I don't know. What do
I
you
think that if somebody's committed a crime, that they should be deported. But the reason that these cities aren't working with them, as I come from Maryland, you know, this state was full of a lot of
Yeah.
cities that didn't cooperate. Um, is because they don't trust ICE. They don't trust because ICE said, I mean, the pitch was
Maybe.
murderers, rapists, criminals, and that 30-year-old person you're talking about, been here for 30 years, they're grabbing them too. They're calling people to come to the
Yeah, I think
courthouses,
that's
thinking
wrong.
they're
I
gonna engage in like decent like immigration practice. They're gonna, you know, and they just grab them from the courthouse, grabbing people outside of Home Depot, and they're just grabbing people randomly. There have been instances where people have been illegally deported. They've sent women to men's prisons in El Salvador. And that's before we've got anywhere close to the fact that Trump's talked about deporting American citizens to foreign prisons, right? So
do you think
once
that's wrong?
you
I do think
enter
that's
this
really
type
wrong.
of rhetoric, now we can talk about 10 years ago or 15 years ago and what built up to this point. But now that we're here, the relationship between ICE, the relationship between the chief executive, and the relationship between these communities who view most of these people as their community members has broken down so much that cooperation has essentially evaporated. And so I agree that there should be cooperation when it comes to deporting criminals, but that's going to have to start from a place of trust that does not exist.
Okay, like I get you, but it does seem to be the case that there are some liberals though who basically seem to be against like almost any deportations in almost any circumstance.
there
It
are.
does seem to be that there are some
But I don't know.
extremists on that.
I actually don't know of
scale.
anybody who doesn't want to deport criminals. I don't know of any. I've never met anyone.
I mean, that's true. I mean, that's true. But at the same time, though, it is also the case that, like, my understanding is that the sanctuary city policies basically block ICE agents from jails to try and stop them from deporting
it's a blanket policy. It's essentially saying we do not trust ICE. You know, we'll just keep the people in jail.
I don't know, but like, if somebody's in jail for a pretty good reason and they don't want, like, wouldn't it, okay, it's like, okay, it's one thing, right, to say like, okay, these cities don't trust ICE, okay, fair enough. But if somebody's sitting in a jail cell because they've committed a crime, and it's like a heinous crime, why wouldn't it be like a kind of instinctual thing by the democratic authorities to be like, okay, we will literally report this individual person to ICE, go collect them and deport them?
I think that there is a question of like any image of cooperation with ICE at this point is seen as sacrilege, considering what ICE
I think
has
that's
been
bad though.
documented doing.
I think that's
Now,
bad for the
whether or not
country, yeah.
that shows that now you could say that shows a lack of prudence, which could be fair when it comes to, for example, ex murderer McGee, who came from like Guatemala or whatever. But I also think that it's kind of tough shit. Like as much as I would say that they haven't cooperated in years, this is built up to such a point that until there is fundamental change in how ICE is being managed, especially as his budget is skyrocketing, it's just they're not going to be able to bridge that divide. And so I agree that maybe there should be some more prudence shown when it comes to the axe murderers and the killers, but any even appearance of cooperation is going to get them big backlash, which again isn't necessarily fair, but that's just how it is.
I mean, I understand what you're arguing here. I still think that it's pretty bad for the country, and I still think it's a.
I'm not
really
saying that you
strong,
shouldn't cooperate and deport the murderers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the reason they don't cooperate is because ICE has destroyed the reputation on such a level, and the Democratic Party is generally like very pro-immigrant, wants to win those votes, that these two things have combined to make it so that they have no interest in cooperating with ICE. And until there is some
like,
trust building
that
exercises, and until local law enforcement, ICE, or whatever comes after ICE, which I think would probably be better, and whatever trust building exercises need to take place, they need to take place, because I don't think it's going to work otherwise.
all I'm saying is, like, I think, like, as you just described there, right? Like you said that there is a strong incentive by Democrats to not cooperate under any circumstances because they want votes. And like, I think that's like that is exactly what I think is driving the Trump populism thing. It's like that's why those Trump guys were talking about the Flight 93 election. That's why they see politics in such existential terms. That's why they see themselves as being like this kind of like necessary authoritarian force to try and like stop America from breaking up. I'm just trying to.
They thought it would.
I'm just trying to say like that. That's what they think about, and I'm just saying like if the Democrats were not in a position where they were like literally refusing to deport illegal criminals because they want to win votes, then potentially there would not be this very strong belief on the right that it's like politics is literally existential. Like it's like they've got 4 years to try and protect the country, or otherwise it collapses, which is how they see it.
I honestly don't think that if the amount of these criminals are actually quite small, in the grand scheme of how many people have crossed the border illegally and then actually went on to do crimes, it's not anywhere near close to a majority, nowhere close to a plurality.
I know,
so wait,
that's
my point
true.
is that all of the anxieties caused by demographic change and all of the anxieties caused by these types of shifts would not change if Democrats cooperated with them on this one issue. I think that maybe it would temporarily boost their image for some. Oh, I guess they are deporting the criminals and murderers and stuff, instead of just keeping them in a jail cell. By the way, if you deport a criminal, some of them actually aren't in prison in their home countries. They just go back to their home countries and do their own crimes, which is his own problem. But I don't think that that's necessarily going to change the problem that you're talking about. Like you said it needed a more wide style demographic management campaign in order to deal with that type of anxiety if you want to abate it, not by convincing them or not by overcoming it through just dealing with the pain and ripping off the Band-Aid, but instead by demographic management.
I've got a question in my chat that I do want to ask you.
Sure, and after that, can
somebody
we
say-
go to chat questions? Because we've been on
Yeah,
going for
yeah,
almost
and-
3 hours,
yeah.
and I want to make sure that we
Yeah,
both get some sleep.
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that 100%. I'll ask you this one question. So
Sure.
I'm not endorsing this comment. I'm just interested in like literally your exact thoughts though, because this is a comment I've got in my chat. It says, just ask Dylan, does Ukraine have a right to conserve its culture and history within a nation state? And if a country like Ukraine became 51% Muslim or 51% Russian, would it retain those things?
I'm fine with them preserving their culture, but if it was like a racial policy of the Ukrainians must be something of percentage of white, but they do things to preserve their culture, I'm fine with people. I would be fine if English was made the official American language. There's certain things that I am perfectly fine with because it's important for people who live next to each other to be able to communicate and understand each other. I understand
that's
that,
fair. That's fair.
but I think that some people underestimate how good we are at assimilating people and turning like villagers into baseball stars.
Fair enough. That's okay. That's fair enough. Let's go to some of your questions because I know we've been going for 3 hours, and I want to say as well, Dylan. Like, obviously, we've had our disagreements and stuff, but I've found this to be a really good discussion, and you are one of the only people on the left that I still like. So, it's good to
don't
talk.
think that I'm like being particularly. If I'm like, if a point stings or whatever.
No, you've actually been really fair.
Particularly mean. It's
no,
I'm
you're actually being really fair.
And I'm blunt, and I'm just.
No, you're actually very
you're
fair.
The Malcolm X fucking Charlie Kirk poster. You can't talk about rage bait. Oh, you offended. You're the last. person.
You're not actually rage baiting. Like I debated Wick the other day, and like Wick was like way more worked up and with animosity. Like you've actually been very fair, and I think it's been a good chat. But yeah, let's go to some of your chat questions.
I know it's surprising that I'm fair. Okay, chat. If you have any questions, throw them out. I have some listed here. In 1 second. Should I read you just the good ones or the bad ones?
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm fine. I know there's going to be some very hostile ones. I've been reading your chat the whole time. People, I understand it, so it's fine. You can read that one.
Yeah, my chat, like, there's people in my chat who like you. Most of them, I'll be blunt. Most of them do not like you, Drew.
I know. Like they're quite left wing. I think it's interesting. Maybe because we've both been to Ukraine and stuff, but you've been very fair to me. Whereas your chat is like kill Drew, but it's okay. We'll discuss.
No, it's not kill Drew. Just some lashes.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to some of these questions.
Okay. Let me read some from Twitter first because they were the first ones who asked.
Okay.
This is from Mercury29. Mercury29. What a name. Let me bring this message up on screen so people can see it. If I can grab the fucking thing. I cannot grab the damn thing. This is obviously Drew's fault. There we go. Is that it? Yeah, there we go. Ask Drew why he cares so much about migrant crime than any other type of crime. For example, Dallas has a higher murder rate than London by a long shot, but conservatives act like London is a more dangerous city.
It is okay. Like one, I won't go there. But anyway, what I was gonna say is like, look, America overall has. Okay, I'll quickly say this. America overall has some really fucked up crime statistics. There are major cultural problems, unfortunately, in the African American community and other communities. It's a lot of it is from poverty. A lot of it is from inequality over decades and generations. So I'm not going to pick on them or whatever. I'm just saying, like, obviously, America has a number of factors. Like, there's been long-term poverty and discrimination stuff and inequality with the African American community. America's also awash with guns. So look, there's all these factors that combine to make America have a much worse crime rate than European countries and other Western countries. That said, I think it is very important to talk about migrant crime because here's the thing, right? Every country on earth will always have, unfortunately, a certain level of native homegrown crime rate. You can just never stop that. It's unfortunately always going to be a part of every single society on the planet because my actual view is I think just like maybe 2% of the population everywhere is just like psychopathic and it's just capable of carrying out terrible crimes. So every country on the entire planet is capable of, will have its own domestic crime rate. I think the reason why people get so pissed off about migrant crime in particular is that it, to a certain extent, is actually almost like a choice to have it in your country. Because, like, theoretically, if somebody migrates to the country, somebody jumped the border 5 years ago and then carries out a horrific crime, like, they would never. There's no reason for them to have even been in the country. It's different. If somebody was born in the country and then they commit a horrible crime, unfortunately, to a certain extent, it's a domestic homegrown problem. But if somebody jumps the border and then does like what they did to, like, say, Lacan Riley or whatever, like it pisses people off to a certain special degree, because it's actually a live question. Like, why were they even in the country in the first place? Do you get what I mean? I think that's a fair question. I think that's a fair point to make. Like, it's almost like a choice to have. If you have crime from illegal immigrants in the country when they really should not have even been in the country in the first place, because it is a crime to illegally cross the border, then that is going to piss people off to a certain degree that domestic crime is not going to piss them off. Like people are still pissed off about domestic crime. Look at law and order politics in America. It's been law and order, right-wing politics on crime in America has been a massive thing for 50 plus years. So people do get really pissed off about domestic crime. But I think migrant crime is just like another level, because it's like a choice to have somebody who's illegal migrant in your country in the first place.
I guess, like, I understand the offense of somebody moves to your country, you want to participate in this country, and then you violate its norms, standards, rules, regulations. Like, you're a guest of my home, respect my home.
That's
If
what
you
I'm
want to
saying.
live
That's what I'm
here
saying.
in my home, you want to rent out my basement apartment, well, then you're going to have to follow some certain guidelines. I understand that. I do think that the specific focus on migrant crime, to a certain extent,
a good question. Can I say one thing? Like, imagine this, right? Like, okay, imagine this, Dylan. Imagine you've got a home. Somebody breaks in from the street one day. Yeah. So imagine you've got a home. Someone breaks in from the street one day, steals all your stuff. And then imagine another scenario where you're renting out, like, you're subleasing your home to a guest, right? Or like you let somebody stay in your house for a week as a guest because they said that they're in a family crisis. It's like a DV situation or something like that. You're letting them stay in your home for a week. And then at the end of the week, they just steal your stuff, go pawn it, and just disappear. You'd probably be more pissed off in the second latter scenario, even though at the same time, the crime is the same, but you'd probably be more pissed off and more morally outraged in the second scenario, because there's actually like this kind of like added betrayal, because it's like they're a guest in your home. And I think that's what I was trying to say.
I understand the idea that they're guests in the home, and how it adds a certain level of outrage to it. But I think that if somebody and I'm not saying this is you, but if somebody talks a lot about law and order, and the only time I see them talk about law and order is when we're talking about certain demographic groups, especially when we talk about certain demographic groups that actually commit crimes at lower rates than the rest of the population. We're talking about American immigrants who do commit crimes at a lower rate than native-born populations. It starts to make me think that the focus doesn't really have to do with calling out crime, and the focus really has to do with trying to make it so this group is less welcome in the United States. I'm not saying that it's your goal. I'm just saying that it feels often for people who, for example, you are on Twitter. How many of these crime accounts are only posting black people?
Okay, I mean, that's fair, but look, in my own personal case, I am actually quite fair in how I respond to this. Because, like, for example, my wallet got stolen in June, which precipitated me getting way harsher on crime. My wallet got stolen, my car got broken into, my wallet was stolen, they took $1,000 of my cards. They still, I don't know what happened to my wallet. They probably just dumped it somewhere. It had like I had like in that wallet, like sentimental notes from a deceased family member. That was the thing that killed me the most about it. Like that, I don't care if it was a white person or a black person who did that, or a migrant who did that. I want whoever did that to get the death penalty. Like, straight up, whoever wronged me, I don't care the racial background or the demographic background or whether they're a migrant or not. If you're a white Australian and you stole my wallet, I still want you to be like fucking like Sharia law, hand chopped off. I'm just so pissed off that they took to my wallet. So yeah.
The Islamism is so strong, it's taken over Drew. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Anyway, let's go to the next question.
Yes, next question. Chat, remember, put your comments in chat. I might not see them if you have something else. Should I go to the just negative? A lot of these are not even questions. They're just
saying like, we killed Drew. Okay, like,
well, like,
give me
example,
some questions.
you know, Anarchy History is a big Australian YouTuber. I got to give the Australian.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
He said in response,
what
question for me: can he self-deport to Taiwan and get the hell out of my country? Thanks.
Fuck off. Just fuck off. You know what's so annoying? Let me just say this, right? It's just absolute bullshit. Anarchy is a white Australian. These guys, they see me have a conservative stance on migration and crime, and then they start going full racist against me, going like, oh, well, 60 years ago, your family were migrants, therefore I'm going to deport you. Okay, here's where it's bullshit, right? The only reason that they say that to me is because they think that they can get away with it and it's not going to look racist because I'm white passing or whatever, right? Like, it's funny. I get all these comments all the time from like far right Twitter accounts going, Drew's brown, Drew's not white and stuff like that. But the reality is, Anamarchy is only saying that Drew should be deported because he thinks he can get away with it and it's not going to look racist because I'm white passing. If there was a Somali guy who had the exact same views as me, like, okay, say there was a Somali migrant to Australia who had the exact same conservative nationalist type views that I had on crime and migration, as if he would say, fuck off back to Somalia. He would never say that in a million years. If there was a conservative black guy who had the same views as me, he's only saying that to me because it's like I'm white passing enough that he can get away with it. So it's just bullshit. It's just complete fucking bullshit. And I just think it's such a fucking joke. But yeah, come on, let's go to the next one.
Here's a question: do you enjoy this? Do you enjoy this life, this type of living, this image that you've produced for yourself? I don't want to say that you've
Good
produced all
question.
this image, but you go out there, right? And you
Yeah.
do a little like Smothers Brothers, Howard Stern. You want to go out there and you want to poke some buttons. And you go out there and you poke buttons, and then you bring the hellfire back. And I'm not saying that every single one of these posts
No, it's true.
you
It's
deserve,
true.
but you go out there and you pick fights, motherfucker. And I know you pick fights.
All right, this is true. This is
So
true.
my
Look,
question
my
to
parents,
you is this how you
Yeah.
want to live your life? Is this what you're going to be doing in 20?
Good
Are you going to
question.
have gray hairs in your head and you're going to be like meme posting about like Chelsea Kitten's granddaughter running for office and like and how like Malcolm X is friends with Vladimir Putin or whoever?
Yeah, no, look, that's actually a great question. Like long term, I want to try and do. I've started a Substack. I want to do more long form writing. I want to do some nice, good long form documentary type videos. Like when I went to Ukraine, I did like basically do some like kind of like mini documentaries, like producing like literally stuff from the front lines. So look, the funny thing is like people know me as a shit poster. People know me as from my shit post and all that sort of stuff. I actually do a lot of like long
But
form
you did go
content.
to
I
the front.
do like more. Yeah. Sorry, what'd you say?
The front line. You went to the contact line.
Oh, I mean, I didn't actually go to the contact line. I was about 5 miles off, I think.
Fair enough. That's artillery range. That's drone range.
Yeah. So I was in. There was some artillery that landed close by to us and stuff like that. I'm not going to say that I was like literally in the trenches shooting at people, but like look, all I'm saying, right, is like I have done, in addition to my shit posting, in addition to like my like constant online battles and stuff like that, I have also done some more long form work, and I have done some more like productive stuff. And look, it's a good question, a great question actually, and it does kind of fuck with your brain a bit when you just have like literally people all around the world who hate you. Like I've seen people like talking in Portuguese about how they want to kill me, and it's like they're living in Brazil. It's like I don't know a single fucking person in Brazil. How the fuck do people in in Brazil know who the fuck I am? It's kind of strange. Like it's difficult. It's a very complex thing. Like part of the problem is that I fucking love debating people, and I love politics, and I genuinely am trying to argue a position that I think is better for the world. The way I try to describe what I'm doing is I'm trying to prevent like civilizational collapse. I'm trying to prevent like civil conflict, and I'm trying to see like I'm very scared that the West is in full decline and that we're going to lose our democracies and stuff like that. I'm trying to prevent that from happening. So like this is my task. I do have an overarching task. There obviously I do shit post and I obviously do like joke around as well, but like I do see myself as trying to prosecute a kind of like argument, trying to change opinions and minds and stuff like that. But you make a good point. Like it is exhausting sometimes, and the amount of hatred and abuse that I do cop is probably like I've been pretty open about this. Like the hatred and abuse that I copped from tankies over the past 5 years definitely pushed me against the left, because it's like past a certain point, like these people wanted me dead, and it's like I can't march at the same parades as these people, you know. So it's a very complex thing. It's a good question actually. I've thought about it in great detail. I want to do more long form writing. I want to do more like productive long form video essays and stuff like that. And I do get sucked into too many shit fights and stuff like that. So it's a good question. Great point.
I was very curious about that. You know, where the man starts, meme ends. I will say when it comes to like going to these protests stuff, I disagree. I went to the Rage Against the War Machine protest. I interview those people. I ask those. I like looking people's eyes that hate me and ask me, didn't Azov beat you up? Nah, I just saw a fake tweet. Like I remember when I was at J6, because I was there. Yeah, most people don't know I was on trial for storming the Capitol too. No, that's a lie. I wore a Biden hoodie. I was at the Capitol, and I did that to see the type of reaction I would get in a Biden hoodie.
Wait, on what day?
Of course, I didn't know what would happen on J6, and maybe if I
shit, you actually were there. Holy fuck!
I was at
That's
the
crazy.
steps of the Capitol in a Biden hoodie.
Did you record it and stuff? That's pretty amazing.
I recorded the first 3 hours until I got to the cap, because the problem is the reception was so ass and trying to stream from everybody was streaming, so the reception was terrible. And so if you got anywhere near the Capitol building and your reception cut out like terribly. But so I filmed
Wow.
like 2-3 hours on the street, and then I went to the Capitol itself and just talked to people at the Capitol steps. And I watched as the rioters, and this wasn't really widely reported. I might be the only one outside of the reporter themselves who saw this. There were these journalists like just going like, it was DW or like all these different like European or Middle Eastern different foreign news organizations, and they're looking in the camera and they say, behind us is a riot taking place, XYZ, and then this one guy hears, riot, we're not rioting, and he takes his American flag and he starts waving it in front of the camera. Then other people gather and it's, oh, fake news. They start throwing stuff at the cameras. They then tear down the barricade, take all their film cameras and smash them on the ground as all the film crew scatter. And that was in reaction to being called rioters, which I thought has a perfect irony.
Oh, it's fucked up. There were like January 6th was a disgrace, massive disgrace, and it's always been one of the things I hated most about like what Trump did and everything.
If somebody stealing your wallet gets the death penalty, what about the 1,500 people that were arrested?
I'm sort of shit posting when I say that the death penalty for stealing my wallet, but I certainly believe that people who carried out violence on January 6th should have gone to jail and stuff like that, of course.
Oh, I'm a stringent. I was there. I saw them. They were not remorseful. They knew what they were doing there.
Yeah,
like the way that they talk about, oh, we just wandered in. I just wandered past multiple police barricades as there was yelling and smoke rising, and you're a fucking moron if you did not. You were getting active reports on our phones about shots being fired in the Capitol building. If you're going in, you are a moron. And when they released these people, they ended up did you see that one guy got in a shootout with police like a few weeks after being released by the Trump administration? Like, if you release people, make them think that they don't have to respect the law, that you reward them for that. I mean, a lot of these guys are being turned into martyrs. They're getting podcasts, they're making money, they're getting social clout. I mean, honestly, like I couldn't have less sympathy for these people. And now some of them are talking about reparations, that my tax dollars needs to pay for J6ers therapy.
That's bullshit. So anyone who used violence on January 6th should 100% be convicted, 100%. And I think it was really bad that people who used violence on January 6th were blanket pardoned by Trump. I think that was a horrible thing.
What do you think about Ashley Babbitt?
I mean, she literally was storming a barricade, and like they were literally pointing a gun at her when she stormed the barricade.
Telling her to stop.
Like,
it was the last barricade before the legislators too.
I know. The sad reality is she was somebody who was fully brainwashed. It's really sad that happened. Like if she had gotten through and they had gotten through, then there might have been way more people killed. So it's like a fucked up thing. The whole thing was fucked up. You can't if police are pointing a gun at you, you can't storm the police barricade while they're pointing guns at you and just pretend like you're.
Well, apparently you can.
I mean,
end well.
I mean, you can, but obviously there's just going to be fucked up consequences. So I think it's actually a sad thing because my understanding of it is that she was an ordinary mum or something like that who just got brainwashed. So that was fucking sad.
Yep. Oh, another question. I don't know if you believe this. Why does he think Mehdi Hassan should be deported for being anti-American, but Groyper shouldn't for being anti-American?
Look, I don't think Mehdi Hassan should be deported necessarily, but I think
Did you ever say that? Did you ever say that he should be deported? Because you get angry, man. You death penalty, deport him, arrest him.
I might have maybe I had a heated debate with him. I think my argument was that I didn't think he was fully American, and people are so pissed off at me for that. Let me explain why. Listen, in 2009, literally 16 years ago, 2009, he gave a speech in London where he called non-Muslims cattle. And then in 2015, literally just basically 5 years later, he moves to America to be the head of Al Jazeera, which is Qatari propaganda and stuff like that. And then he becomes a citizen just a few years later. This is a guy who he only ever apologized for calling non-Muslims cattle in I think it was 2019 or 2020. And it was conveniently just when he wanted to get citizenship. And it was only when people called him out for it. I think he honestly, deep down, has really fucked up views. I think he genuinely is somebody who harbors like Islamist grievances and stuff like that, and harbors
Do you
quite
think
extreme
Mehdi
views.
Hassan
And
is an Islamist?
well, he literally is. Like, dude, in 2009, he was calling non-Muslims cattle. He literally gave a speech in London calling non-Muslims cattle,
Look,
and
I
then he
mean,
apologized for that.
okay, okay. Now, maybe I just believe in reform and second chances. Maybe I'm just a
Okay.
gracious soul delivered by God. I don't know. But that was 2009. Since then, he surrounded
You think
himself
he
with
mean?
queers, leftists. Like, I've never heard him engage in anti-LGBT rhetoric outside of the early 2000s. It's been like 20 years. It's not that hard for me to believe
Not
that
early, not
somebody
early
raised
2000s.
to believe that Allah's God, he's the only God, and if you disrespect that God, you're going to hell. I mean, when I mean, hell, I was saying bad things about the gays sooner before him. It was like 2013 when I was 12 and I went to Sunday school, and I was told the reason that we're not doing good in this country because we didn't help Israel get the nukes, and people are thinking about gay marriage. And that was the two things I was taught, and I brought it home. Should I be canceled?
Look, the difference is though, like,
Of
if
course I
you're
was
a
a
migrant,
child, but again, like, do you really think he's an Islamist now, today?
I think he puts on a really good front where he pretends he's not. But I think in his heart of hearts, and the reason I think that is because he's over the past 2 years, he's like repeatedly, multiple times, defended Hamas, defended the Houthis. He called the Houthis are a breakaway faction in the Yemeni civil war, and when Israel killed the leader of the Houthis, he was like, the prime minister of Yemen has been killed, like basically saying like the Houthis are like the true legitimate representatives of Yemen, and like this is a group that literally has death
but
to
that's
America,
Kyle
death to
Kalinske
Israel.
brain rot.
trust the Jew-
That could be Kyle Kalinske brain rot. That doesn't need to be. And I say that with a lot of respect for Kyle. Okay, but like sometimes he'll say something on a foreign policy issue. He'll just kind of like throw that in there, out there.
But
I
dude, it's
understand
different.
Mehdi Hassan should be more
Mehdi Hassan,
educated, but I don't think that
dude,
that
dude,
could
it's
show that
different.
he is
This is
saying
the
that
difference.
what makes that government any more legitimate than, for example, the Saudi-backed
Dude,
government. You could
dude.
say that critique while it not being an Islamist. You could say he
Dude,
had bad beliefs. You could say he's
Dylan.
wrong. You could say this, but Islamist, secret Islamist,
Dylan,
it just
Dylan,
seems like a little
Dylan,
much.
this is the difference, right? Kyle Kalinske, he's not somebody who knows much about the Middle East. He just talks bullshit about it out of his ass. Whereas Mehdi Hassan has been obsessed with Middle Eastern politics for 25 plus years. And so he knows what he's doing when he's saying that the Houthis are the legitimate representatives of Yemen. And this is a group that has death to America, death to Israel.
Did he say
and
that the
curse
Houthis
Jews.
are legitimate government of Yemen, or are you implying that from when he said the president of Yemen was killed?
Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Like, he's
So the
calling him
latter.
like basically the legitimate president of Yemen. He's repeatedly defended Hamas, repeatedly defended
Did he say
Hezbollah.
legitimate, or did he say president of Yemen?
Well, if you say it's the president of Yemen, you're saying it's the legitimate
Okay,
president
but
of
let's
Yemen.
not add extra words.
Okay. He said, this is the prime minister of Yemen. Yemen has been in a civil war for the past 15 years. The Houthis are a breakaway faction. Nobody recognizes them as the legitimate government of Yemen. He was talking about them as the legitimate government of Yemen.
If you reference their leader as the president of Yemen, that's ignorant, that's wrong, that's factually incorrect. He shouldn't be saying that. I agree with that. But to say that he said something stupid, which is much easier for me to believe,
Dude,
he used to say stuff that was stupid back in
he's not
2009. He
stupid.
said stuff that was stupid before. But to make
here's the thing, he's not
jump
stupid at all.
that
He's not stupid at all.
Islamist, I mean, like Drew, I can come, Drew has said some. I think he's a dictator at heart. What do you mean? Well, I mean, he wants to arrest these people for protest art, and he wants to da 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 da. Like, I can misconstrue like one little detail here, one little detail there. All I'm saying is you ain't proving that in no court of law. Like, you're gonna need a little bit more to convince me that the dude who does broadcasts with queers and he comes off as pretty progressive in modern standards as he lives today is a secret Islamist, trying to bring Islam to America, trying to.
I don't think he's trying to bring Islam to America.
Money?
I think he's just the way that I see it is he's funded by Qatar, and his goal is to try and mainstream Islamist political discourse in left-wing discourse in America. And the reason he has now sort of attached himself to all these other left-wing causes is just simply to try and gain greater credibility with other left-wingers so that he can smuggle Islamist political talking points into the discourse. Like, for example, saying that the Houthi prime minister is like basically the leader of Yemen and stuff like that. And it's not just that, he's made a number of statements that are sympathetic to Hezbollah, Hamas.
Is he Shia or Sunni, by the way?
Shia, I believe. And
it's also funny as well. Like you say, like, oh, it could just be him making a dumb statement, but like, dude, he's like literally been obsessed with the Middle East for 25 plus years. He's actually a genuinely really smart guy. I've seen him debate. He's an exceptional debater. He's very slippery. There are lots of people that I hate politically who I say are just retarded. Like Hassan has a lot of Hassan's stuff is just politically retarded. I don't think he's that smart a guy. But Mehdi Hassan is a smart guy, and I don't believe he's just making a mistake. Here's the difference between Hassan Piker and Mehdi Hassan, right? There's literally video footage of Hassan Piker on his stream in like 2022, like very recently, where he was playing a Countries of the World game and he couldn't place Yemen on the map. He literally didn't know where Yemen was. Mehdi Hassan is not like that. Mehdi Hassan is somebody who obsessively studies American politics, Middle Eastern politics for 25 plus years. It's a very different situation, I think.
Look, it'd be one thing to be like, what does that mean? Or isn't that interesting? Right. But I mean, it's just so little to go off of. It's just not terribly convincing.
It's like, it's not just that though. It's like,
this is the type of thing to me, you'd be like,
yeah,
man, I don't know about Mehdi, man. He should be smart enough to know that that's not the president of Yemen. That, okay, fair. But then you're like, so see, this shows from his 2009 comments about the cattle that actually he's a secret Islamist. It's like, it's just like, oh, come the fuck on. Like, I feel like I'm on the cue boards.
But dude, all I'm saying though is there's just been even if you just take away his 2009 comments where he calls non-Muslims cattle, which is a fucked up thing to say. Like okay, I'll give you an example, right?
A lot of people said fucked up things in 2009. Howard Stern.
Yeah, but dude, like, come on. At the same time though, like, do you think if there was like a mainstream Republican guy who, like, if somebody on the level of Charlie Kirk who was right wing got up in 2009 and said everyone who's not a Christian is cattle, I'm sure that the left wing in America would still bring that up all the time.
Okay, Ben Shapiro wrote articles roughly at the same time about like,
and people bring that up all the time.
Palestinian people and all. Yeah, I get
people do bring that up all the time.
But if I was to say that's his beliefs today, like I would need more evidence than just his article he wrote when he was like 17. And the thing with Mehdi Hassan that makes it even a harder case to make is Ben Shapiro, vaguely speaking, is still in like the same realm when it comes to like where he was then. He's maybe shifted a little bit. He's not saying the black heart of the Palestinian people and XYZ. And, I think it's not as bad as it was. It's still pretty bad. Not as bad as it was. Mehdi Hassan has like wrapped himself in progressivism and sexual liberation and LGBTQ+, and he surrounds himself with that type of people. He takes progressive candidates who are against those types of messages, puts them on their program. I mean, he's much more in favor of these people. And so to me, I'm going to need to find more. And outside of that, he once called the leader of the Houthis the president and prime minister of Yemen.
But it is not just that. Like, even if you disregard the 2009 comments, over the past 3 years, his commentary on Israel-Palestine has been extremely slanted. It's been like, for example, right?
Welcome to the internet.
I know, but dude, okay, like, here's a good example, right? Mehdi Hassan covered the Russian invasion of Ukraine pretty well in 2022. So he knows straight away.
How many Muslim creators are not slanted towards Palestine?
Okay. But what? Let me say this, right?
Can you answer that though, just to see my point?
Obviously, they're obsessed with Palestine. Many of them are.
I mean, it's the big fucking issue. It's like, of course, it's not only the big issue, but even if you were to say Mehdi Hassan's a bad guy, cynically, he could be cynically going after it. He could be like, I want the Palestine views. I want those views. And that could be a different bad motivation outside of Islamism, much more American motivation.
Okay. But Mehdi Hassan, like, here's something pretty evil that he actually did. Like, we saw him like grill Jill Stein over the Russian connections. He has actually had historically a pretty good stance on Ukraine. He's been pretty good on this stuff. That said, though, he repeatedly basically used Ukraine as a battering ram to try and attack, like to try and support Palestine. So he basically would say like, he knows for sure, he knows that the true death toll from Mariupol is not known. Everybody knows that. We can see the satellite imagery. There's mass graves,
but he should know that.
Okay. Well, I think he does know that because he's covered the Russian conflict, like Russia-Ukraine conflict, quite well for many years. He was multiple times, over and over and over again, saying more people have died in Gaza than died in the Ukraine-Russia war. Like constantly using that as that is a very cynical thing because he knows that's not true, and he is making that argument. Another good example of this is what was the other one he did? What was it? There was another one where he had this one recently where he was saying more Palestinian journalists have been killed in Gaza since October 7 than the amount of Jewish journalists killed in World War II. And that is like literally fucking Holocaust denial, because there were literally like thousands upon thousands of Jewish journalists, writers who were exterminated by the Nazis in the Holocaust. And he's just like literally like twisting, and he's smart enough to know what he's doing when he twists the statistic in that way. Like, because what he's doing is he's only talking about like accredited journalists who might have been killed literally in the battle lines, right, during World War II. But he knows that there were thousands of Jewish journalists and writers and intelligentsia who were exterminated in the Holocaust. He knows that 100%. And he still goes like, more journalists have died in Gaza since October. So it's like, it is like very slippery, disgusting stuff. Like that's bordering on Holocaust revisionism.
Okay.
Essentially.
So I look at all of this, and for example, the Ukraine thing, a bad take on Ukraine on the American left. Well, God darn it, I've never heard of such a thing. Like, if anything, that's him assimilating. Yeah. That's him assimilating right there. But as for like the World War II comment, like, yeah, that seems ignorant. That seems bad. I mean, I would have to look at the comment myself, but taking your word on it, all of these things could be things that he is saying and framing because he cares about the issue. And what you know about is what you care about. And he knows about this thing and he cares a lot about it and wants to bring attention to it. And you could throw a million different cynical motivations. Wait, because he's cynical. He could want money. He could want attention, fame. He could want to lie to benefit his political cause. He could want to purposely or non-purposely. He could be spreading misinformation purposely. He could be spreading misinformation on accident. But I can look at all those cynical motivations, and those are all possibilities that I think are much more likely that Mehdi Hassan has successfully hid since 2009 his beliefs around Islamism and the fact that every time he shakes a gay man's hand, he probably washes it in the sink after.
I don't think look, maybe he has come around on LGBT issues. I think though,
is
for
there
him at the end of the day,
is that a thing? Do you think?
I don't know. I think there are some people who are like, I've noticed this trend where it's like there are Muslim guys who might agree with the left on all these different matters, but at the end of the day, they have this kind of like cultural tie where they will literally end up defending like Hezbollah and Hamas, who are like literally massively anti-gay. Like I've seen this, right? Like there's a really good example of this guy. There's this guy on Twitter called Marj Bar America who's got like 100,000 followers. He lives in LA, and he's literally a bisexual OnlyFans model, who literally a bisexual OnlyFans model. And this guy literally says like he loves Hamas, he loves Iran, he loves Hezbollah and stuff like that. This is all on his Twitter. And it's like this guy is literally like a bisexual OnlyFans model. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran would all kill him, but he has this kind of like tribalistic attachment to political Islamist terrorist groups. That's a fucked up thing. That's a horrible problem. That's a horrible, horrible cultural problem where it's like you literally will, I don't know, literally be like a full-blown leftist when it comes to American cultural matters, but just like for some reason at the same time have this kind of like suicidal attachment to like hardcore Islamist political groups at the same time for like tribal reasons.
Chat, throw your last questions because I want to go to bed and I want to make sure.
Yeah, because we've actually
last questions out there. Do you have your?
I didn't think it'd go for so long.
You can ask questions.
But
again, like all these things about, I don't know if Mehdi Hassan defended Hamas and Hezbollah specifically. I've seen him like talk about like Palestinian ministry health numbers. I've seen him like talk about, well, what causes Hamas violence? You know, where does it come from? But all of these things are pretty synonymous with what the left is today on, or
because the left has absorbed a lot of Islamist shit
on Palestine that
could
easily justify any of these positions outside of the idea that Mehdi Hassan is a secret Islamist. Like, oh, look,
but the left is mainstream Islamism.
All I would say, Drew, is look, okay, I don't know what you're going to win the Nobel Prize for. I'm sure it'll come one day, but you should try to get a prize in literature, prize in journalism, and go hunt it yourself. Go see if he gets financed by Islamist groups. Go see if he goes to a secret mosque. How often does he attend? Like a secret, does he go to any secret like radical mosque? Do we know what type of mosque he goes to? Do we have any of this type of information?
I've got no problem with him going to the mosque. I just think that he has like, unfortunately in his political views, even if he's quite left-wing on cultural matters now, for some reason he has this very strange, bizarre and distressing, like consistent pattern where he always defends Islamist political terror groups. But we've got I've got one question from my chat, and it can probably be like one of the last one, and then maybe you can just do like one or two from yours, and then we can wrap it up because it's been a very long one. But someone said, Dylan, why do you respect Kyle Kalinske? He's extremely against supporting Taiwan, and he's really anti-NATO.
Kyle Kalinske, I think he speaks to a lot of issues that people care about when it comes to working class stuff domestically in the United States. I appreciate that. His position on Ukraine has gotten better with time, and I appreciate somebody who has the ability to change and kind of see like if you are honest about what's happened over the last 4 years, his transformation makes sense, right? I don't think he dug himself in against Ukraine because he needed to be aesthetically lefty. I think that after 30 to 40 to however many years since Burning Man of American activism on foreign policy when it comes to the left online has been anti-war activism. And all of a sudden, turning on a dime to say we need to crusade for this thing that we made promises to. America shouldn't act like snakes. The world is not so simple as saying kumbaya. You must defend your rights. Rights matter. Civil liberties matter. All these things that we say we need to fight so viciously for at home, we should fight for when we talk about our friends and allies and the people who are reliant on us for security. Definitely if we ask them to give up their atomic weapons for our security. And I think with time, he progressed and he got better on that. As for Taiwan, I think that the left is very, very blind on Taiwan. And the fact that they're willing to give up 25 million people and erase that democracy pretty limp-wristedly is bad.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that I've seen him transform on that, and I've been listening to Kyle Kalinske since I was very young, leaves me with still amount of respect for him because I know he's telling me what he really believes and he's not just following the sheep herd. And I think if you could sit him down and talk to him about Taiwan, that maybe, who knows, you can move him on it. But who knows?
The problem that I have with the left, Dylan, is that there are all these people like Kyle Kalinske who, like, I wouldn't necessarily call like outright tankies, but they have these basically tanky adjacent positions. Do you get what I mean? Like someone like Kyle Kalinske, I don't think he's like an outright tanky, but like on a lot of these foreign policies, it's just like he's like absorbed via osmosis. This like broader.
He's definitely not a tanky. I mean, he's anti-authoritarian to like to extreme. He's very free speech. Like he'll protect like the stuff I was protecting earlier. He will protect when it comes to speech. I would say that there are people in his immediate vicinity that you could definitely point to, and you could say that there are people who are maybe. I don't want to say he's audience captured, but there's certain things that people will cheer for and you'll get a reaction and you'll respond to. And I think that can have an effect. And I think it's really, for me, it's going to be blind spots. You care about, like I said earlier, you care about what you know. You know, people ask me, why do you care about Ukraine? It's because I know the people here. I love the people here and I love this country. And I think that the cause they're fighting for is righteous. And I think that what they're fighting for against is wrong. And I believe everything here needs to be documented. Journalism is the first draft of history. You need to get a good fucking first draft. For Kyle Kalinske, he knows about Palestine. He knows about the destruction there, so he cares about it. And as time has gone on and he's gotten to know Ukraine more, he's changed in a positive direction. If somebody can show me an ability to change for positive and they're not stuck in their ways and they're just going to do whatever the crowd asks, or they're just going to like let their blind spots stay blind spots because it makes them uncomfortable or it might change with what they think about some of their positions. If somebody can show me that, I'll respect that. There's certain people who don't have that. Tim Pool doesn't have that. Benny Johnson doesn't have that. Crystal Ball is pretty weak on that. Anna Kasparian's pretty weak on that. There's like a bunch of different creators who I think are definitely, even when it comes to, I mean, Anna Kasparian's takes on Ukraine were so dog shit. I mean, unbelievably dog shit. I remember she invited me onto the Young Turks at the start of the war once I went here and I filmed. Never followed up at all. I go and turn into Young Turks, see what they're talking about. We shouldn't give Ukraine Patriots because they don't work. Is the commentary we're getting on the Young Turks. Just blatant, just bullshit. The type of stuff that could actually cost lives. And so Kyle Kalinske, to my standards, I've seen improvement, and that's a lot better than other people who I've seen get worse as the war's going on.
Would you agree with me, Dylan, that there is a problem where there are a lot of these kind of like center left or type Bernie people who are like not actually explicitly tanky, but unfortunately they seem to absorb kind of like tanky foreign policy just via osmosis, like the general left wing vibe.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at the crowd around you, or like you're generally anti-war, and so these people who have been around you, they were against invading Afghanistan, against invading Iraq, and so now all of a sudden they're also okay. We're against supporting weapons Ukraine. Well, I don't want to blow anybody up. I don't want the bombs to blow anybody up. It's very simple. It's easy. And so you adapt it. It's very hard for, I think, the left to aesthetically say that an aggressive stance here is necessary for the United States. It's necessary for these people's rights, or it's necessary for the commitments we made. It's very aesthetically difficult. There's problems with leftover Russophilia. There's problems with like Cold War framing that like some of the left, especially the Burning Man left, has been unable to shake, as if this like every war is Vietnam and every war that will ever be is Vietnam. So there's a bunch of different problems, I think. But again, a lot of it is you care about what you know. And I think a lot of these people, not all of them, but a lot of them, if they knew the situation better, I'd like to think they'd be better. Maybe my trust in humanity is a little stronger. At least when it comes to Kyle, I still see a soul in his eyes.
See, that's my version of Charlie Kirk, where I agree, like all his foreign policy stuff was shit, but I still think he didn't.
No, I
he's
disagree.
overall.
I heavily disagree. Because as the war went on, his positions got worse and worse and more ignorant and more dog shit. The fact that during the end of the war, during the end of his life, the last big takes I heard from him was Ukraine, they don't have an elections, they're not a democracy. Would Churchill have done that when Churchill did do that? And then said Finland is basically Russia. He's getting worse. He's not just having bad takes on Ukraine, he's extending it to the rest of Eastern Europe. So I can't
I do agree that is shit.
I can't give him credit.
Okay, look, fair enough. I do agree that like he had shit points on Ukraine. I do fully agree with that. Should we do like one more on
Ukraine? All of his points on Ukraine were shit. I remember.
I agree. I'm agreeing with you. I am agreeing with you.
As the right was turning more and more against Ukraine, and he had to find a way to flip towards the crowd, and that's how I view it. He went up there and said, well, when it comes to supporting Ukraine, the problem is that they just don't understand Jeffersonian democracy. It was just nonsense, grandstanding, finger wagging.
There's a really good comment in your stream. Someone goes, Drew, what do you think of Australian bands like King Gizzard removing their music from Spotify due to CEO EK's investment in German drone co making drones for Ukraine, Sweden, and Estonia? They are fucking retarded, and I hate communists. It's just simple as that. I'm so sick of it fucking sucks, man, because I'm so alienated from youth culture these days. I'm so alienated from my own youth culture. Like, I've basically got the it's so fucked up, man. I've basically got the mindset of like Richard Nixon in a fucking 26-year-old body. Like, I'm like the fucking blue head hippies. It's just so bad, man. I just hate these people so much. They're just so bad on Ukraine. They're so bad on everything I care about and I love. And I can't stand it. I just can't stand it.
Last questions. Last round. Okay,
yeah.
Everybody, you better submit your last rounds. If I didn't ask you a question, it's because it was terrible. And I don't like you on a personal level. Get your question through. What's that song? God, there's a one King Gizzard song I really like.
I don't really listen to it that much.
The fuck was that song?
I'm actually surprised you know King Gizzard.
Well, there's a song that they have that got stuck in my head, and I used to play it over and over and over. Outlaws on the run, running from the soldier's gun, something like that. I forget what it was. I have to look it up.
Right, I'm actually surprised that you know King Gizzard. Like,
I know a little bit of Aussie culture. Okay, come on, Smoko.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
You know, I know a little bit.
Oh yeah, Smoko. The Smoko thing's cool. You should come to Australia sometime.
Maybe. Have you guys dealt with that dude in armor with the revolvers yet? Have you took him out?
Ned Kelly?
Yeah, you take him out yet?
He was killed 160 years ago.
Okay, then I can come. I was worried about him. Yeah. I was waiting for you guys to deal with that.
Ned Kelly.
That seemed pretty scary.
You know, we actually have almost like a kind of like repeat of that. It was like, except like way more psychotic. There's like a sovereign citizen guy in Australia right now, in literally like the same part of Victoria where Ned Kelly operated 160 years ago. So it's like the Victorian Alpine high country where we can actually get a bit of snow. And this guy was like experienced bushman, and he's like
Billabong Valley.
Sovereign
that was
citizen.
the song. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, sovereign citizen guy, and he killed 2 police officers in an ambush, and then he escaped into the wilderness. And they've been hunting him for a full month, and they haven't been able to find him. And he's like a sovereign citizen psycho.
I saw a thumbnail not a thumbnail. I saw something on Twitter about this. Like this guy, people were talking about how he has such a low chance of survival in the bush or something, and like the.
Well, I don't know. Apparently he's an expert bushman, so they reckon he could survive for months. It's a strange thing. So some people have compared it to Ned Kelly, but I think Ned Kelly actually was like a persecuted bloke, whereas like this guy's like a psycho, evil person. But yeah.
Last questions. Looking through them now. Let's see. What do we got? Do the emus still rule over you? I'll answer that. Yes. Where else?
Well said. Very true.
Oh, this is from Red Hand. Drew argued sanctions against Israel wouldn't be effective, yet he's advocating for sanctions against Iran. How does the efficiency of these measures differ?
The difference is that Israel is still a democracy. There is still a mechanism by which you can defeat Netanyahu in internal elections. You can't get rid of the Ayatollah in Iran at all. So I think there's a difference, and I think the problem is that the Israeli population has been drifting more and more and more right wing because of like the decades of terrorist attacks and because they feel like they're under siege and stuff like that. I think there is still a democratic mechanism by which you can defeat Netanyahu. Like a good example of this is like Haaretz, which is like the Israeli leftist publication. They literally had like Jewish leftists living in Israel saying that they like Hamas in Haaretz. And it's like, okay, in Iran, do you think they are allowing any publication that is pro-Israel in Iran? Of course not. So Israel still is a democracy. You can still actually change the government of Israel through democratic means. And I think the risk is that like widespread sanctions just pushes the Israeli population ever more right-wing and into the arms of Netanyahu.
Sure. One second, I want to respond to one of my own chatters. Dylan, you're okay with all of Ukraine being from Africa? I'll never take you seriously again. We'll never take Dylan seriously again. Okay.
Who's that? He's probably not your actual own fan. It's probably like a right winger or whatever.
Well, no, obvious. Well, all my fans are fascists, as has been confirmed by many of my critics. Azov, all of them are in Azov. Every single one. And the only ones that are not in Azov is because they were They were taken by right sector, private sector. Look, I don't give a fuck. Okay, I grew up in Prince George's County. Grew up surrounded by black people. Okay, I've never met like black people in Ukraine that attacked me or hurt me or anyway. I don't care about the skin color when it comes to these countries. I care about the people. If that's your obsession, oh, they're all from Africa. I don't care. Guess what? You're all from Africa. We all came. All from Africa. We all came